Good evening, bonsoir. Welcome to the special public meeting on November 12. Bienvenue à la réunion spéciale publique le 12 novembre. On va aller avec l'adoption de l'agenda, adoption of the agenda.
That the agenda be approved as presented.
All right, I'll need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor LeBlanc. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Ms. Parker, do we have any declaration of conflict of interest?
No conflicts of interest were declared.
All right, so we go straight to finance at 3.1, general operating fund budget. Mr. Pettigrew, I'm assuming we're going to Madame Gauvin? Okay. All right. Madame Gauvin, vous avez le micro.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Merci. So tonight we continue the budget process that we started early in October. As a reference, if anybody needs additional questions that I might not have the answer to or specialty, all the department heads are sitting behind me, so if you have any further questions, don't hesitate, and that's why they're here. So obviously we started on October 9th. We presented the first draft of the first budget, the utility operating fund, general capital fund, utility capital fund. They'll be reviewed again tonight in big sections, but really tonight we will be concentrating on the general operating fund, the first draft. That's the biggest budget that we have. Pardon the interruption. So we will discuss the last three, but tonight really is the general operating fund. We were scheduled on October 23rd. Because we only received our assessment quite late in the game, we had to push it to tonight. So let's start with the general operating fund. So like the last time, this is the first version of the draft budget. It is always evolving. We're still receiving information in and out. It's starting to slow down for new information, but every day we adjust according to new realities. The discussions that we will have with Council tonight will serve to guide staff in the required adjustments for future drafts until a final version is made for the resolution. So tonight is the first one, but the second review will be done on November 25th for hopefully passing resolution on December 2nd. So you'll see that tonight there's no proposed tax rate because we need to have guidance from Council on what they wish to do for certain sections of the budget. So that depending on your answers, it changes accordingly. And because we have some of sub-units, so for North Tedigush and Big River and all of those sections, where any small changes can vary very much in their tax rates when the impact is inserted into their budget, we can't come up with a tax rate until we have those variations inputted in the draft. Obviously, if we have new information that comes in on a daily basis, something we present tonight might change by the time we present on the 25th. So I won't re-explain the whole municipal reform again. This is the third year's budget that we've went through. But keep in mind that in 2023, we have new lines where we have two wards. One of those wards includes two subunits, which is North Tedigush, and then I don't like that it's called, when we look at it in the documents, that it's called Big River and others, but it's more than just Big River. It's quite a big sections that include formerly managed by the province territories that is now part of the whole city of Bathurst. So because of that, there's three different tax rates, and this year is the third year of that municipal reform. So for everyone to understand the slides during the presentation, so just a little background. Throughout the presentation, each budget column will be identified according to the old limits or subunits, as well as for one for shared services. So as revenues and expenses in Ward 2 and Ward 1 can only have an impact on their own tax rate, any revenue and expenses within shared services will be distributed according to their assessment base throughout the budget. So really that's why we need to have three different tax rates for three subunits, and then the shared services are spread accordingly between all three. So as we mentioned, each subunit for a new entity can only be charged for their services received. Because of this, we have to have their 3 different assessment values. So depending if you're in one region or another, every assessment value that comes in from the province is still divided by their old subunits. And we do calculate 3 different tax rate. And at the time, the transition period that was there selected a transition period of 6 years. So with the municipal reform, the old city of Bathurst, all the costs that we started with that was in the shared column used to be paid 100% by the old city of Bathurst. Now with the municipal reform, those new sections that would be in Ward 2 now have to pay for their portion of those shared services. But let's say that we went all out in year 1 and asked them to pay the full cost of their portion of it, their tax rate would have been from 0 to a whole lot too quick on them. So obviously there needs to be a transition. So while it transitioned, the old city of Bathurst still covers that cap, but it gets adjusted every year. So this year's year 3. So this is the budget format that you will see throughout. So that's why we gave the definitions, is because throughout all the budgets you will see that same table. So before looking at assessments and all of that, there's some sections that we do have to keep in mind that affect all the budget throughout. It's nice to see the whole package. So for the Regional Service Commission, we presented last time that there was an increase of $69,274. Those costs will be distributed throughout. Their budget is only up for resolution on November 20th. So if they make changes on their budgets, obviously, we'll hope that we can adjust it on time and on our end. But if not, right now, these are the numbers based on the budget that is being circulated that are included in different portions of the budget. Then from the Regional Service Commission as well, we have revenues and expenses that are now shared for recreational installations. So for revenue, when we get to that part, you will see that we have an increase of $239,000 for the revenues for Casey Irving Aquatic Center, and we have access to the RSSF funding. And the expense for the Spalplex for $22,630. The synthetic soccer turf had a surplus, so there will be no cost for that. So you will see those throughout the budget as well. So let's talk a little bit about inflation. So insurance, fuel, and electricity also affect multiple sections, but it's nice to have them all bundled up because they are quite numbers when you look at the total budgets. For insurance for 2025, we increased the budget by 10%. Using the 2024 projected amount. So whatever we had in 2024, we increased 10% out of that budget. So the total budget for 2025, $253,000. On fuel, that one we adjusted accordingly. There was major increase before in like 2023 where we had big jumps. Now it's kind of stabilizing a little bit. So the budget for 2029 was only increased by $10,000 to stop at $668. But the electricity budget, however, we looked at where we are in 2024, and from that multiple sections, we added the 11.5% increase asked by NB Power. So that one has a bigger impact on our budget for 1.3. So although we have a budget, let's say, a little over $35 million in the general operating fund, add the CPI to that, you're eating $1 million. But there's some budget sections where we have to add more than the regular CPI just because of an instance like electricity. So money goes by really quickly when you add all of these amounts up. So okay, let's start with the revenues. That's where we get into the nitty-gritty. Property tax warrant, that's really what everybody wants to see, what everybody wants to hear. So I will go in much details in the future in the next slides, but overall, the assessment value for the city of Bathurst as a whole has an increase of 7.9%. And when we translate this in the value of the warrant, so that's the name for the money that we collect from the property taxes, we would receive from the collection of property taxes, it means an increase of $1,967,348, or 7.6 compared to 2024. So the assessments overall increased 7.9 in our budget. The assessment value, because there's multipliers, translate to 7.6. We have to be careful thinking that we have a lot of money available to do new things. Just considering the regular inflation that I mentioned, 1 million, that gets eaten away. Then you add the other cost increase we just saw, and we have a lot more than regular inflation, and a lot of that money is gone for services we already have, not new ones. The proof is by what we started the presentation with. Currently, we are coming to council with an unbalanced budget, a deficit one. If that money made a lot of space, we would be coming to council with a surplus budget, asking with recommendations of what we could use it for instead. Tonight's not the case. We don't balance, even though we have 1.9. It seems like a big number, but we still don't balance. Let's look at the assessment in different sections. Where did that increase come from? Well, North Tedegush increased by 11% for a value of 8.4 million, and in 2024 it was also 11%. The other local districts, Big River and all of those other, also increased by 11% for an increase of 12.5, and in 2024 that was 9%. For the Old Bathurst subunit, the increase is 8 million for a value of 80.6 million. It was 9% in 2024. So that's for the residential rates. When we look at the non-residential rates, North Tedegush increased 5% for a value of 12,300, and there was the same increase as 2024. The other local districts increased by 3% for a value of 340,000, and also had the same increase as 2024. But for the Old Bathurst subunits, the increase was 6% for a value of 11.7 million. In 2024, that increase was 3%. So we doubled for non-residential in Old Bathurst. So altogether, that makes a total of 5.5% for the non-residential for the $12 million increase in assessment value. If we look at how that translates with the current tax rates, if we take that assessment and we translate that to their respective tax rates for North Tedegush, it means $72,000 more. The other local districts would be $110,000 more. For Bathurst, the old limits would be 1.784 more for that total of 1.9 million we were referring to earlier in the presentation. So we receive every year a presentation by Service New Brunswick, which provides us with a lot of information where we can analyze where that money, where those changes were. So if we look at the change due to new construction, we can see that the value of the building permits were higher than the previous year. The change in assessment due to new construction was 0.82% for a value of 11.87 million versus 0.78 last year for a value of 10.46 million. Now looking at the value due to the reassessment, well, in the assessment field, the best indicator is market sounding. So the more houses gets sold, the more information Service New Brunswick has on the value of those houses. So that's why you can see that we have a lot of new assessments compared to previous years. So in 2023, there were 266 arm's length transactions, but when you look at this table right here, for this year's assessment, there were 314 transactions for sale of properties. The high number of property transfers creates a great source of information for Service New Brunswick, and the result was 7.06% in change due to reassessment in 2025 instead of 7.26 that was in 2024. In Service New Brunswick's presentation in the year 2025, all four of the province saw increases, with Charlevoix region at the highest point with 15% increase. However, even with this higher increase, it is still by far the lowest median sales price, with the others being 100 to 135 higher than the Charlevoix region. So when you look at the line, you can see that, yes, we did have an increase, but compared to all the other places in New Brunswick, we're still 100 grand under their sales median price. So a house in Charlotte region will have a median of 884,000, whereas Fundy will have one of 287, Valley has one of 305, and Beauséjour has one of 321,000. The change for all properties in Bathurst, so by increments of 5%, how much will the assessment increase when it gets down to their assessment value that comes in? So this graph shows 0.2% that will see a decrease. It's hidden behind the no change. 2.9% will see no change in value. 12.9% will see an increase of 5%. 16.9 will see an increase of 10%, and 67.8 will see an increase over 10%. So that is from Service New Brunswick table. Obviously, we don't have the sheets per property, but overall, that's the distribution that Service New Brunswick provided us for the distribution of the increase of the 7.9 total. So the comparison with other cities and the province. So for 2025, the assessment for Bathurst has increased 7.9 versus the province that increased 8.7. The graph here shows all 8 cities for 2023, 24, and 25 compared to the province. So in all the cities, Dieppe had the highest increase again this year, then Moncton and Miramichi with Bathurst in 4th place, and it's followed by Fredericton, then St. John, Edmundston, and Hamilton. Comparing municipalities by percentage growth is not the only indicator to establish new money from the tax rates. We have to be careful when we say that a certain section increased more. So look at Fredericton, for example, which increased a little bit less than Bathurst at 7%. That will translate in 9.9, almost $10 million in additional property tax revenues, versus ours that's higher, that provides 1.9 million. Moncton increased 9.7, it will translate into 17 million. So even if they lower their tax rate, they will still receive more money than us at the end of the day, even with a reduced tax rate. Hamilton, 5.6, they have a higher tax rate, but they will get less money than Bathurst at 1 million. So we have to be careful when we compare increases in percentage, because when you really look at the assessment value, the sheer amount of value in those assessment, and when you add the non-residential to it, when it translates to money, does not translate to the same. So like every year, we like to compare the rates with the other municipalities. So for Bathurst, all the 8 cities, we are at 1.7750 for a few years now. The average of all the 8 cities is 1.59. Another indicator that we look at, but I will show a second slide that is more telling, we like to see where we are positioned throughout the province. So historically, for many years, we've been in second place at 1.775, with Hamilton being in first. And the list below us has been shuffling a little bit in the past few years, because some of them are increasing slowly and are catching up. But when we compare these tax rates, those are only the tax rates charged directly by the municipality. Some municipalities, when you look over here, and that's where we start looking at another analysis, if you look at the residential tax rate, where we would normally just look, we miss what the other municipalities get charged on top of that. So services provided by Minister, Kedgwick, and there's 2 in Kedgwick. So one for the subunit St. Jean-Baptiste Men Local District, and Eldon Local District receive a charge of 0.0002 for the management of those municipalities because they are still municipalities that are without council. So they are managed by the province. So they receive that charge. On top of that, a lot of municipalities in New Brunswick are still managed for the transportation section by the province. So North Tittagush in our case is still that way, Big River and all of those sections. So they are receiving road surfaces, reparations, snow removal, all of that. They still receive that from the province. So they receive an additional charge of 0.4115 per $100 of assessment. So when you compare the old city Bathurst limit at 1.775, that has a full service level, with these municipalities now with a full rate to compare a full service level, Bathurst now becomes in 5th place. If you go to Niguac in Alnwick, you will have a total cost on your tax bill of 1.9721, Kedgwick 1.831, and so forth. The unconditional grant, so that was for the assessment. Unconditional grant that is also very, very much linked to the assessment because it influences how the money gets distributed throughout the province. So for 2025, the total unconditional grant will decrease by $228,000 compared to 2024 for a total of $3,276,000. This represents a decrease of 106 for the core funding component, which as part of the municipal reform will continue to decrease by 20% every year. That money is reallocated to the RSCs for that RSSF fund that we presented. And at the same time, we also decrease for the equalization portion by 162. So since the municipal reform, the total unconditional grant has decreased by $498,000. I will take a drink.
Madame Gauvin, on a une question. Es-tu bonne pour répondre? Oui. Conseiller Leblanc.
Merci, Madame la mairesse. Madame Gauvin, si tu peux revenir à la slide précédente,
Oui.
tu parlais de la CSR. Il y a une diminution annuelle de 20% de ce qu'on reçoit à cause que ça va à la CSR
Oui.
pour leur budget. Mais nous autres, on paye par-dessus ça à la CSR pour un budget également, c'est ça?
Oui. La
Ce 20%-là,
CSR,
on le perd-tu complètement, vraiment? C'est ça?
on le perd complètement dans le sens que pour les subventions inconditionnelles, on pouvait faire ce qu'on voulait avec cet argent-là. Il n'y avait aucune condition. Maintenant, par ce fonds-là, ça doit aller pour des nouvelles initiatives à 50%. Donc, il y a 50% qui doit être payé par les membres, plus 50% qui doit être payé à travers le fonds de RSSF qui venait autrefois des municipalités. Donc, si que c'est une initiative qui va pour quelque chose que la municipalité ne participe pas, on perd la valeur qu'on recevait de la subvention inconditionnelle automatiquement pour un service qui doit être nouveau. Fait qu'à chaque année, on augmente les frais pour des nouvelles initiatives. C'est vraiment là qu'est la catch-22 du fonds. Ça doit être des nouvelles initiatives où on paye le 50%, puis l'autre 50% vient de l'argent qui était autrefois à nous. Donc, ça fait une courbe.
Oui, c'est un peu plate pour toutes les municipalités dans le sens que c'est pas une mauvaise chose qu'on prend l'initiative. À la base, elle est bonne. Mais ce qui n'est pas bon, c'est qu'on a déjà des initiatives, chaque municipalité, que ce serait le fun de pouvoir les payer eux autres avant de commencer à payer des nouvelles. Et puis là, ça nous met dans un genre de pétrin. Aussi, on a des besoins individuels, mettons, comme ça peut arriver parfois dans chaque municipalité. Donc, ce que vous me dites là, c'est qu'en gros, c'est de l'argent qu'on perd, ce 20%-là, qu'on pouvait partir de nos initiatives qui convenaient à nos citoyens, peut-être, dans certains cas, qu'on peut plus.
Si l'argent va pour une initiative dont on ne participe pas, comme l'année passée, le planning, on l'a mentionné l'an dernier, le planning allait pour une initiative qu'on ne participait pas, ben on a perdu la valeur qui aurait venue avant pour la subvention inconditionnelle, puis à la place, elle a été vers cette initiative-là. Mais c'est vraiment, ça, c'est pas la CSR qui décide vraiment comment c'est réparti, c'est vraiment au niveau du fonctionnement du fonds là, à la base.
Parfait. C'est beau. Merci beaucoup.
Ouais. Ça va? Local taxes. So since 2020, the city has been collecting tourism accommodation levy. So the amount that was budgeted for 2025, based on this year's trend, is at $250,000. So we are budgeting $10,000 more for revenues from the hotels. Services provided to other governments. So for this one, the first line, we look at fire. We have the St. Anne Fire Station that renders services to other surrounding municipalities. And a lot of those are for the province. We have Pebino First Nations, and we also have St. Anne that renders services to North Tedigush. So it is an expense for North Tedigush, but a revenue into the St. Anne column. So for 2025, the budget that was projected is at $252,000 for the cost recoveries based on the 2024 budget. The police has a total of $220,000 in cost recoveries for the integrated enforcement unit services. So IEU, excuse me. And this includes the maximum cost recovery for one police officer and one administrative assistant. The eligible amount has increased by $45,000 for that section. Dispatch services are offered to the BNPP as well as many other municipalities in the Chaleur region, Restigouche, as well as the Acadian Peninsula. And in addition to dispatch calls for 911. Altogether, the revenue for 2025 is budgeted at $1,021,000 for an increase of $29,000 compared to the previous year. Highway maintenance completed on behalf of the Department of Transportation has an increase of $16,000 for a total cost recovery of $189,000. And although there was an increase in the amount paid per kilometers maintained on their behalf from $358,000 in 2024, $358 per kilometer, in 2024, and 2025 they'll be cost recovered at $385. The cost of maintaining those roads on behalf of the province is still not fully covered. Solid waste shows a new revenue of $165, but that's because in 2024, the city started collecting waste from outside of its borders on behalf of the province. We then charged them back for the cost, which will show in the expense section. So that one should net out. For recreational installations, shared services, the revenues mentioned in the Regional Service Commission section earlier ends up at $594,000. And finally, the amount of $30,000 represents the cost recovery from the province for hazmat for the fire sections. And there is no change for 2024. Sales of services, fines, and other fees have an increase of $62,000 overall. The Casey Irving Center has a budget increase within there of $77,000 in revenues, and this includes $61,500 more for concessions and bar based on historical trend. And the rest of the increase are for rentals and walking program, but a decrease in events. The rest of the amounts for this section are very miscellaneous cost recovery. So $2,500 for police services, that usually includes criminal records check. There's a little bit of decrease in planning and tourism, other programs, but really mostly those are cost recoveries. Other revenue from own sources has a total revenue increase of $206,000, and the additional revenue mostly comes from licenses and building permits. And there is also a $40,000 that is budgeted in gained interest. So if you look at the last, fines, which includes bylaw enforcement and interest fees, there is a budget of $140,000 that is just for the interest fees collected from the bank accounts, the money that we generate from them. We had budgeted $100,000 last year. This year, we're comfortable at projecting $140,000. We did check at one point. We were contacted by the bank if we had the interest of investing that money. The current contract that we had right now, at the time, obviously those changed, but at the time was so favorable that they said you're going to gain more money, but the interest that you're generating right now with what they could get on the market. So we still look at it once in a while, but last time we checked, that's the answer. So we just leave it there and we keep the money just coming in for the interest. For other government transfers, on the federal side, those are obviously conditional grants that we get for different projects. So for the federal, we have 12,500 for programs at the waterfront. Then we have on the provincial side 5,000 for Daily Point and other recreational programs for 3,000. Prior year surplus, if you remember, we've talked about it when we discussed the capital budgets, financial statements. 2023 had a surplus of $1,524,000. That money has to be budgeted 100% in 2025. It's not the same as a utility fund. That one has to go fully this year. So if you remember, in the expenses, that money is budgeted to be completely allocated to buying new assets or capital budget fully cash for that $1.5 million. Transfers from other funds, $578,000 is for the fees that the general fund charges to the utility fund for administrative services. So there's 10% of those fees that get charged to the utility. So there's HR, there's finance, there's 6 different categories where services are charged to the utility in the amount of 10%, and that is the $578,000. Before I go to the expenses, are there any questions?
Not so far.
I wish there was one just so that I could. But that's okay. I might take a few breaks for the throat.
You're allowed.
So on the expense side, we'll start with the service section that are general government services, which include legislative, administrative, financial management, comment services, and other general government services. And those costs are fully, for the most part, on the shared side of things. Some are per subunit, but most of them are by shared. So on the legislative side, which is Council's direct budget, the budget for 2025 is at $426,000 compared to $411,000 in 2024, so an increase of close to $15,000. But because it's Council's direct budget, and once in a while, you will see sections where we will say that this is a section for consideration for Council. So all of those, you don't have to remember them by heart. Those slides will come back at the end of the session because we want your input. We want your input on the whole thing, but those are really things where we want additional input from you. So this is one of them. So this will bring back the slides, but right now, what we have in the budget for the mayor's, on the mayor's side and on the council side, for salaries, we have $69,854 for 2025 for the mayor's salary, and on the council side, $250,370. That increase is from 2.9% CPI as per the current bylaw. So right now the estimate that is there is 2.9. For the travel for the mayor, it has a total budget of $17,700. And for the council members as a whole, it is $45,000. So there is a reduction, but that is because on that side, it's a reallocation of the discretionary budget from travel to miscellaneous goods. So it's not because we're cutting travel, it's just because last year the discretionary budget was allocated differently for that amount. On the mileage for travel, more specifically, it includes travel for AFMNB, the AGM, the FCM AGM, the UMNB AGM, and for the mayor, it also includes the AFMNB roundtable and other unscheduled events. For the mileage, that's the per diem for council members for coming to meetings. Then there's telephone equipment, $500 for the mayor and $5,000 for councillors. Advertising in the mayor's side is for graduation, Acadian Day, ou Fête des Acadiens, Christmas, and New Year's for a total of $2,500 compared to $1,000 in previous years. Those are in both languages. Miscellaneous goods include a discretionary amount for the mayor of $2,500 and for each councillor $1,000 each, so a total of $9,000. So the increase of $9,000 that you see there, that's a reallocation of the discretionary budget. Finally, for miscellaneous goods, we have for the councillors, candies for hospitality days, the parade for Christmas Day as well, and participation to different golf tournaments in that same budget. An additional line on the council side, you have $10,000 for seminars or development seminars that might be offered throughout the year for $10,000. Are there any questions before I go? Obviously, we'll bring it back for considerations, but for the moment, are there any questions on your own budget?
No questions so far. Oh, hold on. Yep. Deputy Mayor Willett?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. One thing, if we go back to the insurance contract going up again, did we go out for bids, or are we stuck on a contract for so many years, or?
We're not stuck on a contract for so many years. Obviously, it's one that we've been discussing a lot internally to see if there's better avenues, but it's such a big contract, or it's such a big analysis that would have to be done with appropriate expertise, that obviously it's not something that when we started discussing it in 2024 that we had time to implement 2025. But it is really on the radar, because every year they keep increasing. Do we get the same? Could we get better elsewhere? That is something that is being discussed. There's different sessions that are being offered throughout the year where we saw there's different options, but it is a big undertaking to take when you don't have a broker or that specialty as a professional. But we are looking at it.
I don't know if we got a presentation from Canoe Insurance, but I know that even the CSR went down by almost $50,000 this year in insurance for insurance costs. The other one I have is Beldoon. You said we're at 76,000 or something like that for their part in the red. So does that include the $40,000 that they also produce, or?
For their
Because
part,
I know they're
where's the
capped at
Belgian?
40,000.
Oh, you mean for the recreational installation? So the costs that are for Belgian, so that's why we presented the table that are for the regular services and the ones for the recreational infrastructure. So the costs that are there for Belgian, the total of their expense is really at 40,000. The cost that we have of 78,000 includes the portion that we take on their behalf for the difference.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor Branch?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just looking at the legislative detail, it says under travel for mayor, it says there's a variance of $1,300, but when I look at that, the difference is $7,300. So I'm not sure.
Which one?
Travel for
Travel.
mayor?
Oh. Yeah, that is a typo.
That's where the typo
I
is.
apologize.
Okay, right on. And the other thing, you had mentioned travel and goods merchandise for council. They were the same from 2024 to 2025, and I'm not griping about it. It doesn't bother me at all, but it looks like it's actually down a little bit, which again, I'm fine with. It doesn't, because if you look, travel, the budget for 2024, travel alone was $61,200. Now, if you look, travel and goods merchandise are $60,000 total, so it looks like it's down $7,200, which again, I'm fine with.
Yes, so there is a portion, 9,000 of it is for the discretionary, but the variance would come from,
In 2024, 8 cities was budgeted for travel, but it no longer exists, so that was taken out for 2025.
Right on. Thank you.
Madame Gauvin, I do have a question for the salaries, because if you look at, I'll just use council. It says here that, and even for myself, unless there's additional fees, I don't think in 2024 that mayor made 68 and I don't think council made 26. Could that be an error?
that one I don't think so.
I'll have to double check, because I don't think those are not the numbers. I can guarantee you it's not the numbers.
Yes.
Okay, with the fringe benefits.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Okay.
That does need to be,
All right, okay,
I
with the benefits.
could have put it in
Okay,
asterisks, but
all
it
right,
does
that
include
makes
in fringe
sense.
benefits.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Yeah. I should have specified that part. Any other questions before
Good to go. Okay, oh, hold on, Councillor Hondas.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I know before the reform, there was, or after the reform, they had looked for us to do a council salary review. Is that time?
So in the year that we had budgeted a council review, it was because at that year, council had no budgeting authority. So the increases had been made with the facilitator, not knowing where the members that would be there at the time would want. So that was because it was a transition year with the facilitator. If council wishes to look at their salary again, that would need to be a motion by council to decide in which way they want and how much do they want. Last time it was a study that was made by citizens. Do they want to wish that way, or do they have a salary in mind where they want to just us to allocate it for 2025? Really would have to be something that is brought from council now that it's fully functional council with directions of what they want to do. Yeah.
In 2018, when we had the study done, well, we hired, well, 4 volunteers. We didn't hire anybody. There were 4 volunteers. And that was after the study with l'IFMNB. And from there in 2018, they did say, do not wait 4, 5, 6 years to review it again. So this is something that council may want to consider. And if you want, we can put a committee back in place and have it reviewed like we did back in 2018. So this is on the table. It'll be something for you to think about. And if that's the case, please absolutely let us know. And we can put that forward in 2025. So Councillor Hondas, you can keep adding to it, or?
Well, basically, no, that's where I want to put it on the table, because I remember last time we decided not to, and I think it may be more from councils in the future that we're remunerated the same way as other communities our size. I basically just want to put it on the table, so if we can get an independent review to see if it's worth it, then fine, I would consider that.
Okay, all right. Councillor Anderson?
Thank you, Worship. I would assume, though, that this would be a decision that would be need to be made now, so that for the budget purposes,
Yes.
and if not, then to me it should just be studied for the new council coming in for 2026. By the time you get a committee together and stuff like that.
The decision we would have to, during this budget right now, until we go to our final budget meeting, that decision will have to be made, so we would take that in consideration.
So there's 2 ways. Either a buffer is put in, and so it affects directly 2025, or the study is made in 2025, and there is a variance throughout the year because the money wasn't budgeted for, or it starts 2026 budget and the work gets done during 2025. So it's still in time for a next budget, for a next council.
I'm not looking for it.
No,
I
I'm
just
just-
put that out there. I'm not
Yeah.
looking for it. I just wanted to clarify that that would be something that would have to be discussed during this budget process.
It would have to be during this budget process, and in all honesty, I think that if there's, if the feel from council wants to move forward with it, going into 2026 and then doing this budget increase, to me, I don't recommend it. I would recommend it going into 2025, not 2026. So, but again, it'll be up to council. We'll be meeting anyway to have a conversation.
We will be,
Yeah.
So at the end of the session tonight, we'll ask for specific guidance from council on this item, since it's being discussed right now, because when we come on the 25th, we're hoping to have a suggested tax rate, and this is a shared cost between all subunits, so it does affect the specific tax rates for everybody. So we will have that slide again at the end, so in the meantime, throughout the presentation, by all means, think
So we'll
about
bring
it,
back at the
and
end.
we will
Okay,
bring it back.
Perfect.
Yes.
That's good.
So we will be looking for direction on this. On the administrative side, the manager's budget has an increase of 84,000. So a small portion is for CPI increase for regular salaries, but really there's a budget allocated for professional services for the corporation where we typically have needs throughout the year. Clerk's budget has an increase of 43,000. That is mostly due for translations costs. So right now we're budgeting an increase of 34,500 due to the absence of the regular translator. Another firm has to be used, and we had to increase the budget from 15,000 to 34,000. The rest of the budget really is for regular CPI increases. The Human Resource Department budget will require an increase of 355,000 for salaries, professional services, fees, and recruitment that make most of the increases. For the legal services, there's an increase of 12,000 for legal services throughout. That's simply for regular CPI increases and memberships and subscription fees. Communications has a total increase in their budget of 166,000, but there's an $80,000 from that increase that is for a branding exercise. So as a new municipality, before investing on specific signs, so yes, we still have, there's some signs that were completed, but some signs that are still left to be done before investing money to have all of those. If we would do a branding exercise the years after they're built, they would then have to be changed quite quickly. So the branding exercise, you will see we have signs further down when we get through the other expenses, but that branding exercise would strategically be before that part. For the financial management, we have the total increase is for $230,000, and really is the same reason for all section. It's simply a reflection of a full finance team instead of vacancies throughout the year. For common services, if you look at civic relations, in 2025, there is a budget of 5,000 allocated for Freeman of the City. And then there's a 5,000 that is allocated for training and development that touches all departments of the city, so corporate training. On other general administrative services, the cost of assessment is the fee that we pay to Service New Brunswick for their work in evaluating the properties within the city of Bathurst. So their cost is 0.01940% of our tax base with a 1.5 times multiplier for the non-residential. So obviously by us having increased, their fees will also increase. So that's $324,000 budget for an increase of $23,000. The Regional Service Commission for their corporate fees is budgeted at $67,000. The conventions and delegations are, we don't expect anything in 2025, so that one's budgeted at $0. And then we have the liability. So as we presented the liability in the first slide overall, we have some that are corporate liabilities that touches everything. That full amount for this section is $352,000, so that's an increase of $68,000 compared to the previous year. And then we have the Municipal Association memberships. That cost has decreased by $21,000 because in 2024, we had budgeted for the 8 cities that is no longer existent in 2025. So that budget was removed, but it still includes the Association francophone des municipalités du Nouveau-Brunswick, so AFMNB, Conseil économique du Nouveau-Brunswick, the Chaleur Chamber of Commerce, Federation of Canadian Municipalities, and the Union of Municipalities of New Brunswick. So those are still in there. The IT budget has an increase of $144,000. Just for software purchases, it's an increase of $88,500. It's a lot of user license base now. We used to be able to purchase softwares or it was a one fee, cover everything. Now it is very much user license based. It's the new reality. It's the Netflix format. It's all of those subscription formats. It has also an increase of $12,000 for equipment replacement, training for $8,000, and then the regular CPI salary increases for the whole team. On the other general government services, so that's the last section before we check the protective side. This includes 64,000 for local improvement assessment as 2024. There's no change. But then it also includes 165,000 total grants budget. That's the same budget that was in 2024 from council. So we didn't change that part. There's a next slide to complete this section. But this is one where staff will also need direction at the end that will be brought back for consideration. So for now, what we need to be aware is that in this budget for the 165,000, there's already allocated amounts for recurrent grants. So we have 2 bursaries for BHS for a total of 1,000, 2 bursaries for ESN for the same 1,000, and B Medical Education Foundation, so scholarships, those are until 2025 for a total of 10,400. So 2025 is the last year for that one. Sistema per year until 2027 has 15,000 allocated. Old Post Office, 20,000 allocated per year. North Tedigush Recreational Center has 45,000. So all of those amounts are already allocated for 92,400, which leave discretionary amount of 72,600 for the full 165.
I will just interject here, just for the North Tedigush Recreation Center, as you know, we have a 3-year lock-in for 45,000. I attended their meeting that they had, I think myself, Deputy Mayor Willett, and Councillor Scarry, and they are all volunteers that work there. The president and the vice president are stepping down, and they will be having their AGM in March, and they are having a really hard time. So they're trying to find a new president, a new vice president. They might go on the outskirt of not just within North Tedigush. And ideally what they would love is to be able to have an employee on staff for maybe 10 to 15 hours a week to help them out. Because they do have a revenue that comes in for rental. But it's always volunteers. I have to go open the door, clean it up, pick it up, come back, close again. So they are requesting to see if we would consider giving them 65 as opposed to 45. And then with some of the revenue that they're making, so that 45,000 pays the bill because they have a mortgage on that. It pays the mortgage, it pays electricity. Everything is meant to go towards paying, everything else that's in the facility. They do make a little bit of money, but not enough to be able to pay someone for 15 hours. And I'm asking council if council would consider, and we can bring it at the end when we bring for council a study, if you would consider wanting to increase that to 65,000 to give them an opportunity, and then they can apply for different funding programs or through, I know the Chamber of Commerce has a program where you can hire someone 55 plus to work part-time, that they would take advantage of those programs. So any feedback from council, see their take on it? Councillor Anderson?
Thank you. First of all, I have a question. Is this our same grant fund that used to be $30,000? That was jacked up, that went from 30 to 60 to 120. Now we're looking at 165?
That 165 is the same amount as 2024 because it had increased. Before it was separate, the 45,000 for North Tedigush was
part of
kept
that.
separate. So that's where the first increase comes. But yes, it is 165. Now we want to change how we manage the grants for 2025, and that's why the list on the right, when you look at the total of the requests that came in since September, where we had our first meeting, so all the grants requests were supposed to come in on September. Since then, we've received a grant request at least every council meeting, and we've also received grant requests through letters that council, it's listed here because we have a way of tracking those, but those are letter received for grants that council is not even aware of. That total is 165,000 in new grants request, plus the request from DBRC in the contingency. So at the time when we started doing those September meetings for requests, it was mostly for things that are major projects that are handled by the city. So if it was a commission, a major grants budget that was being requested, that was the purpose of those meetings. But now all the grants that were requested during the budget sessions are kind of bypassing the grants policy by not going to the grants committee first, because they're kind of pre-approved in the budget package. So what we are proposing now is that, considering the list of the requests that have already been received, really the budget process, what we're asking council for consideration is the total budget they would like to allocate. So if it remains 165, it's 165, decrease, increase by how much. And then all of those requests would follow the same mechanism as if you were asking it for a grant by letter or presentation in March by going to the grants committee, just like everybody else. Because really these ones get approved by council as a whole versus going through the process that everybody else goes through. So really the questions that we're asking council tonight for consideration is, what's the budget that you would like allocated for the total budget, which would by default give the grants committee their budget that they have to work with throughout the year. And then they could do their recommendations like they do, the analysis, and then bring it back for resolutions if they propose it or not from
I'm
council.
going to be honest with you, like, because it was at 30, then went to 60, then up to 120, now it's at 165 because of the 45,000 from the rec center in North Tedigush. I was going to propose tonight to reduce that back down to $60,000, where I feel it should be, because I almost feel like this grants fund has become like a petty cash, that we're supporting every association in the entire region. Like that committee, when I started on council in 2016, we had $30,000 in that fund. 15 of it was already allocated to the Hospital Foundation and the Multicultural Association. There was 15 allotted. So we worked with $15,000 over the year. And it was that money went to things like we helped the Heritage Center, but it went to things for schools and kids and milk funds, things like that. And we've gone from, and we'd always end up with a couple $1,000s left over at the end of the year. We've gone from that to this astronomical budget that, like I said, I feel like it's a petty cash for everybody and their dog in the entire Chaleur region. And I think we really need to be putting a cap and changing the policy on that grants fund, because I feel it's gotten out of control.
If I can add to that, if you look at the list, and I know we're going to get to that after, but the $250,000 we have for tourism is being used for repairs, U-Haul Beach building upgrades, waterfront boardwalk, Santa Anne crosswalk, tourism signage. So the hospitality days, $50,000 is being put in grants, which technically to me should be towards tourism. The $150,000 DBRC, that's for the piece of land that we bought for $50 and they paid $100 for development on Main Street. So we're putting all of this into grants, and we're taking tourism levy, hotel levy, that's meant for tourism, to repair pieces of the city. Just so there's, I don't know if you had an opportunity to review it. I personally believe, and I can add that during these past, since last summer, the amount of people that have come up to me, and I don't know if it's happened to council, thanking me to going above and beyond in part of the grants. So if you look at Curl for Heart, if you look at the Hennessy House, if you look at the Bathurst Art Society, if we look at the disability, person with disability, $500, that's not even on this list here. So there are things that we've been doing that we are helping other small businesses, that they come to the city and that they're impressed with the fact that we're willing to work with them and that they can come to us and ask us for certain funds. So I was approached to ask with DBRC if that was going to happen at this point with a $165,000 grant that we have there. And Councillor Anderson, I'm not saying that we have to have $165,000. That belongs to council. You guys decide that. But we are spending money towards tourism, put towards grant, which shows that, yeah, we're spending $165,000 on grants. You have the mic, Councillor.
Yeah, thank you. I turned myself off by mistake. Yep. And I mean, there are things there that I don't believe belong under the grants distribution, but you know, many years ago, when we still had the $30,000 budget, we gave to the Disability Association the $500. All the ones that you listed, we still supported all those organizations with the requests that they wanted, and we gave them as much as we could, still dealing with the $30,000 budget that we had. There are things there I don't believe should be considered under the grants list, but I still feel that this budget is way too high. I think we need to cap it, quite honestly.
And I also believe that the North Tedigush is part of Bathurst now, and we are putting them towards a grant.
We do not own that center.
I know
So it
we
is
do
a
not
third
own that
party, so
center,
by
but if they all
definition,
walk away, we'll end up owning that center.
By definition, if we don't own it, it is a grant. We lose complete control of that money once it's out of our pockets.
Okay.
So that's why even if the money comes, like we have people coming in and saying we can take the money from the tourism levy. Where we take the money from is irrelevant of, is it the definition of a grant? So when we come to the tourism levy, we will discuss the tourism, how we have allocated it for 2025. But regardless if it's something that is made by the city or given towards a third party for a grant, a tourism grant, it is still a grant. So we for accounting purposes, because in the annual report, Ms. Parker has to mention all of the ones that receive money for the city, and it is a grant. So at the end of the day, in the annual report, it is still showing as a grant. So we want to try to budget accordingly in the proper sections.
Well, once we get there, we'll talk about it. But again, then if we take that $250,000 tourism levy and put it towards the grant, then it's a grant.
So that is a decision that will have to be made of council if they really want to switch the tourism levy to be a grants fund, because the purpose of the tourism levy is not a grants fund.
I know it's not a grant fund, but you
by
just
the
finished
city.
saying that the other one, so for me, hospitality days, there's certain things on there that should not be put towards the grant because it's for tourism. If we look at what we did with the Corvette Show last year, if we look at what we did with the curling club, last year we used the tourism levy to put towards tourism events. And now going into 2025, that is not the case, and it's all being spent.
Yes, but what we're trying to do is clean up the budget, allocate things in the proper space. So when we discuss a tourism levy, I will show how it progressed to that. But really what we're trying to do is a cleanup of what it is because of the progression of the tourism fund, where we started and where we are now, of where the purpose of that fund. So when we get to that part, I will give more details about what it is, so I don't want to go too much ahead.
Okay.
But if it is giving to a third party, we still want to look. So we will be looking at those slides for consideration side by side when we get to that point, so that you can consider the whole total. But if it's given to a third party, regardless of where the money comes from, it should be considered a grant.
Councillor Burnett?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I remember years ago when the tourism levy was put in place, there was a tourism committee locally that got together and decided that they were going to do it, and there was quite a few objections to it too. But they were scared that the monies would just go into general operating, which it has tonight. General operating should not have the tourism levy money into it at all, because it's there to entice tourists to come to town and to entice events like hospitality days and the Piscataway Sport Lodge. You get their trails ready for the people to come to town. That's what the tourism levy money was for, and that's why it was separate. So I don't agree with putting it in general operating. The tourism people at the time were scared that would happen, and now it has. So I have to disagree with that. Charlie's Cat Rescue is on there. That's not in the city. That's operating only outside the city. We have SPCA, don't we? You know, and
Yeah, well, I think they came and did a presentation and did a request. So everything that's in there, that's requests. That doesn't have to be accepted. These are requests.
'Cause I
What's
thought-
on the left-hand side is what we are giving, and what's on the right-hand side is what's the request. So those are requests that will have to come and council will have to decide.
Yeah, because I thought at the time we said, no, it's not in the city. We have the SPCA, and I don't know why it's showing up again tonight. But anyway, thank you.
All right. Okay.
Can I ask one question?
Yep, go right ahead. Just hit your button.
It is.
Oh,
my
your mic's still on. Okay, good to go.
What budget did hospitality days the donation that we made to Hospitality Days, what budget did that previously come out of?
Some years it's through the grants, and some years for hospital, it's through we put them in tourism, but it should have been we should have done less expenses in other ones and just put it in grants. But where the money comes from, it's like asking people coming in and asking, can I have something that comes from directly a project that you pay with your property taxes. It's a revenue source where we have to make
Right.
sure that we allocate 250 towards tourism. So overall, as long as we invest 250,000 in tourism, which section it comes from, but we decrease the expenses for some stuff that staff could have worked for in investments in tourism to help the third parties with their requests. Because as I will present when we get to that tourism, let's not forget that when we started, we did not know how much we would collect from
No,
that
I
tourism
realize.
money. So we didn't want to associate any expenses throughout the budget process. We allocated as the revenue kind of secured itself.
Right, and I'm really not even so
Yeah.
much talking about the tours, like, for me, it's a separate issue for sure, but just like, and I'm not talking last year or the year before, let's go back 5 years, where we didn't have a tourism levy. Our grants fund that we use, that people would request monies for whatever association it may be, that came out of either a $30 or $60 fund that council had at their discretion for that. At that time, Hospitality Days, because I'm trying to remember, like, when it came to the budget process each year, it was kind of like put in the same section as Coronation Park and the park in East Bathurst, like, it was kind of put in that section. I'm trying to remember, like, where it came from.
By memory, before we had
Tourism.
before 2024 that we had access to that,
Yeah.
from when I've been here, it was in the grants budget. Before I was here, I don't know, but when I was here, it was in the grants budget.
So then do we have two technical grants budgets?
What do you mean, what?
Because, like,
Sorry.
when council gets, so when we had requests that would come in from associations in town, looking for $500 or $1,000, or the Heritage Museum was looking for money annually, the Multicultural Association was looking for monies annually, we would receive those requests. The grants committee would meet. We had a budget. At one point, it was $30,000. And we would go through all the requests and allocate X amount of dollars to each request. But Hospitality Days was never included in that batch. That was something that was completely separate. It wasn't handled within that grant budget.
So the way that it worked in previous year, and that's why we were trying to clean it up, because some are done during the budget process, they kind of bypassed the grants process, like the rest of the requests that came other times of the year. So what we're trying to do is streamline that process. So yes, you're right, there were two amounts. There was a pre-allocated amount by full council.
Right.
And then there was the other amount that remained for the discretionary for the grants committee that became kind of the discretionary amount.
Right.
So, but really what we're presenting right now is like we have 92,000 that are I'll call it the second budget that the grants committee wouldn't see because it's already allocated. And then the remainder of the 72,000 is what you would refer as the equivalent of the 30,000 that you would have towards the grants budget for discretionary. So yes, it's two amounts, but in the financial statements, these still end up on the same budget line.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yes.
All right, we're good to go.
Okay. Protective services. So these ones include police, fire, emergency measures, and other protections. So starting with police. Police have a $5.9 million budget as a whole. And if you remember in 2024, we had budgeted for a transition from the RCMP to the Bathurst Police Force for Ward 2. So we had budgeted 3 months out of the 12 for the RCMP. In 2024, we did receive the confirmation that we could go ahead, and we were not charged any fees from April to December, even though that transfer is not officially done. We still haven't received an invoice for those additional months. So for 2025, you will see that the RCMP line is fully at zero, creating savings for that line of $189,000 for that 3-month portion that we paid last in 2024. But when we look at the other expenses, obviously we have a few changes according to that transfer. So for the police administration, we first have a budget increase of $23,000 because of regular salary increase and additional travel. In crime control, we have an increase of 104 total, but $97,000 for that is for a regular increase and small increases throughout the budget. There's quite a bit of police officers. So this section includes crime prevention, investigation, identification, and street crime unit. For traffic activities, it has a total increase of $159,000. This increase includes 209 in regular salary increases, but remember that we have 2 new hires to complete the municipal reform. Last year when we presented, we had 2 new police officers, plus 2 new in 2025 for the full 4 total that was required. So this is the follow-up to that transition. But that's compensated by the savings by the RCMP. There's also savings, however, in that section of $50,000 because we had budgeted startup costs for that transfer, but now they are appropriated throughout because we're further down in the process, so we do have those savings of $50,000. That section fully includes traffic activities for uniform division, court traffic, prison detention, and police equipment. For the training, it has been reduced by $12,000 to an overall budget of $95,000, and that's a reflection of the actual costs that we see for the trend more accurately. Station and building has the same budget of $203,000, which is a transfer from the building section for the maintenance of that building, electricity and all of that. The increase in equipment for $31,000 is for additional fuel for $20,000 and for the recording system agreement with Axon. So this system was part of the 2024 budget, but there are yearly fees and yearly rental fees. And this includes the body cams, dash cams, and interview recording that is now fully functioning in the police force. Detention and custody of prisoners continue to maintain the same budget at $45,000. The IEU has an increase of $11,950 for regular salary increases. Out of that total budget of $228,000, the city has a cost recovery from the province of $220,000, so that one almost nets each other out. The emergency response team is a new section, not new to the city, but new just for a category, just for tracking purposes. It used to be spread throughout the other sections, but because the police department wanted to track how much it was costing them, they have allocated a specific budget to it. So right now, for that first year, they allocated $14,500. So it's not an increase, simply a reallocation from other sections. For fire protection, starting in 2023,
Hold on, I got a question
sorry.
from Councillor Burnett.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Getting back to police protection, I've been reading lately where other cities are going after the provincial government for the monies that we send to them for traffic violations and for speeding, etc. And they don't give us anything back from the monies that our police force collects. And we want our police force to be out there calming traffic and catching speeders and taking care of that side of things for people because it makes our city what it is, a nice quiet place to live. But if we don't get any monies back from the provincial government for this, that's not fair at all. And some cities now are wanting to put the traffic cameras at the lights to catch people that are jumping lights. And in budgets for a couple of cities, they said, no, we're not going to do that because the results of that will only go to the province and not to the citizens of the city. Do we have a handle on how much money we give the government for traffic violations and not get anything back?
Not offhand, but We don't have those figures, but we could investigate, though.
Yes, we could look into how much revenue this could generate, but just to give a perspective of where we,
I was going to say, nobody can hear you.
money's back is through an assistance program, a sponsorship for our training. So for example, certain courses, when we apply for the 2025 budget, we'll apply and we'll be able to get tuition. I believe last year we had approximately a little over 20,000 in grants or sponsorship from the province from policing standards for training tuition courses for in-service officers. So that means they attend those courses, mostly are at the Atlantic Police Academy and PI and the Canadian Police College in Ottawa.
Yeah, I understand that part, but I still think we collect a heck of a lot of money that they just keep. And there's a lot of municipalities now that are really upset with the police service they're getting, and yet Bathurst, to my opinion, has a very good police service, and they're serving the public very well and keeping the traffic calm most of the time. But anyway, I think we should get some of the monies back. And now we have a new government in with a new premier. Maybe the time is again there that we should be asking our MLA, our deputy premier, to stand up for us and get some monies back.
Mr. Pettigrew, do you want to add to that?
Thank you, Worship. Councillor Burnett, you're correct. It's one of the items we discussed with the UMNB as fine sharing. I think it's a provincial discussion that all municipalities and all associations are talking about. So I think it's going to be a coordinated effort. It's all on fiscal reform, and at this point with the new government, there will be presentations made, and I imagine that's discussion. But Councillor LeBlanc would be part of that committee, and as well the mayor. That's definitely, fine sharing was one of the items that we looked at of missed opportunities for funding. We spend all our money in events and training on certain events, but we don't receive the fine revenue that goes along with the required training, right? So.
Yeah, I'm happy with the training. I think it's great, and keep our troops up to snuff like in current standards. But again, I don't think it's fair what they're doing to us.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
All right.
Fire. So 2023, we've integrated all the fire stations. There's 4 in St. Anne, and we have 2 fire stations in the old city of Bathurst. So when I started, I mentioned that there were costs that North Tetegush was paying to the St. Anne. St. Anne is part of the Bathurst/Big River column. So the cost for North Tetegush of $98,000 is for their portion of the the fire services that they purchase from the St. Anne fire service stations. So if we go line by line for the total contributors, for the administration, we have $169,000 that is on administration fees. That includes salary increases. We have a new executive position budgeted as part of the fire master plan. We have telephone equipment and training, but we do have savings because in 2024 we had a budget allocated to pay for the fire master plan that is completed in 2024, so that's taken out for 2025. The firefighting force, we have regular salary increases throughout of 320, machine and equipment 5,000, and then fire alarm systems, we have savings of 8,500 within that section. Training and development is for Fire St. Anne's, which has savings of 6,000. And then we have the station and building. So the main station has a projected increase for its rent of 22,910. So the fire station that is close to City Hall, that one is rented, and the contract is CPI increases every year. So we budgeted accordingly for a 22,910 increase. The substation for St. Anne that was previously owned by the province of New Brunswick before, because it was owned of the province of New Brunswick, had no property taxes to pay. But now that we own the building of St. Anne, inside of those increases for the fire St. Anne column, it's property taxes of 18,000 for that total. That's inside of the 326,000 that is part of the Big River column. So they do have that cost now. Fighting equipment has a communications equipment decreased by 30,000 for the renewal of radios that has been done in 2024, and not as much is required for 2025. Is there any questions on the fire before I?
No.
Okay.
Oh, hold on, both of us. Councillor Burnett?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Fire training, is that enough money for training? One new development that I see is electric vehicles are a real challenge if they catch fire, and they are catching fire, some of them. And are our firefighters trained now up to how to deal with the electric bicycles and electric vehicles that are having these fire issues?
I will give that. Don't ask me to take out a fire. I will. The building's going down. I will ask the fire chief to go.
That $5,000, that's for administrative training. I do have a separate budget for the firefighting training. It's around $20,000.
So you feel comfortable?
Keeping up with the electric vehicles, not just vehicles, laptops, whatever, like lithium ion is becoming big in the industry now. So we have been keeping up with that end of it.
Yeah, because I think communication-wise, too, the fire department might have to change the way it communicates with people about storing these electric things in their garages. Because I don't know if you've been following along the news and that, but there's been a number of issues, fires started by batteries, and there's a way to keep care of them and a way not to let them sit there all winter, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's happening too, if you take bicycles, they're not really storing them in the garages. In the winter time, they put them in the basement of their homes. We have had an issue with that late last winter or early spring, where the bike was in the basement and it did catch fire. They're fairly safe. It's when people start to play around with them and try to get a little longer charge out of them, or a little, you know. Yeah. So we have a program, it's called First Do, which communicates directly with the residents of the city and the business owners. And we're going through the process, and we will be doing some.
So you figure your team has enough training to handle that situation, of those?
Yeah. Yeah, we also invested pretty heavily in what we call the F500. It's an agent specifically designed to deal with lithium-ion batteries and electrical fires. Yeah.
Thank you. That makes me feel better. Thanks. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
At least they're not touching your coffee when they come up, you notice that?
I know. I think everybody knows that would be an emergency situation, and dispatch would be called, which brings us to dispatch. So the total cost for 2025 for dispatch services is $1,724,000. That includes the full set of requirements to deliver services. As we mentioned in revenues, we dispatch for BNPP, fire services through Acadian Peninsula, Chaleur Region, and Restigouche, and also for 911 on top of our own calls. So they take quite a bit of calls, and that covers the cost of not only staff, but the equipment. So we do have contracts for those big consoles that they use. So they're quite specialized consoles, and they have yearly fees associated to that, plus agreements to maintain specific sections or specific licenses for those software. So it is a big money for 1.7 million, but we do recoup quite a bit, not all of it, but a portion of it in the revenues that were presented earlier on. So out of those increases, really there's 92,000, and the full cost is really for just regular salary increases based on CPI. For other protection, the total increase is 27,000. So for building inspections and bylaw enforcement, there's small variances, and that's just for regular salary increases. Animal and pest control, a new contract will be awarded for the years 2025 and 2027. So the provincial contract for the SPCA is also ending at the same time as ours. So the new tender that is out will cover Ward 1 and Ward 2. And right now we're budgeting 143,000, but it will cover the full scope of it versus last year. It was divided per section. Now it is a shared cost because it will cover the overall. So we took out what was budgeted separately. For the Regional Public Safety Committee, there is a budget of 28,883. The increase of 23,000 is due to the request on their end to hire a safety coordinator in the year 2025 for emergency measures. That's part of the big Regional Service Commission project allocated that was presented at the beginning of the session.
All right, we have a couple of questions. Conseiller Leblanc?
Il y a une simple question. On n'a-tu pas déjà un, nous autres, ici à Bathurst?
Which one?
Safety coordinator.
So we don't have a safety coordinator itself right now. It is managed by the Bathurst Police Force, where we take care of public safety. This one for the Regional Service Commission would be regional public safety versus when it's through the Bathurst Police Force, it would be specifically for Bathurst. Yeah.
Ça fait que là, la police s'en occuperait plus. On aurait...
They would still continue to do that, to do their own part, if I'm not mistaken. So that one is a section that when we presented last time, additional information was being requested to the Regional Service Commission to not have a duplication of service. And if I'm not mistaken, on November 20th, they are bringing more information, and I think they asked for emergency. So my counterpart in the back.
I'll add Deputy Mayor Willett, because since he sits at the Regional Service Commission, I wasn't there, so maybe he can add to it.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, we voted against that, so.
Yeah.
We voted against that, so you shouldn't have to see that, that on there, because we voted against having a public safety officer for the CSRs.
Okay, so that means that when we receive a new budget, because right now this is through the budgets that have been circulated, so we will take that in note that it's been refused, because that means that we should have a new circulated budget with new numbers to budget, and for us it'll be savings.
Yes, it was voted down at our last meeting.
Okay.
So.
All right, before I go to Councillor Branch, is that still got the mic?
I'm assuming it was voted down because BNPP does the same thing as our police force?
Because it's just a duplication of services.
Thank you. That's all I had.
All right. And I'll go to Councillor Branch.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just for additional context, the way it was left that it could be revisited at some point down the road, like a few years down the road. But at this point, Bathurst feels they have things well in hand, and Bell Bay just recently put someone in that position. So they didn't think the time was right for us to look at a regional one besides.
All right, just save 95,000. Good. Thank you.
Okay, so are we good? Okay, but thank you. We will update, we will request them an updated circulated budget in that case. Before I switch to transportation services, are there any other questions for everybody behind me with a badge? Just before we switch.
No, you're good.
Okay, so I'm guessing that Matt will be the next one up, Mr. Abernathy, for transportation. So common services section of transportation. So transportation as a whole is one where the City of Bathurst still takes care of all roads for the old City of Bathurst, but not Ward 2. So pretty much all of the costs are through the column of budget 2025. Side note, however, this common services, although it is said that it is for only the City of Bathurst, let's not kid ourselves to say that the engineering team is not also answering questions to Ward 2. So it is still in the column for budget 2025 in the old City of Bathurst, but in reality, with all the transfers of the way that things are managed, let's say DTI, all of those budget transfers, anything that comes, they are still managed by city staff a lot of the times. So it's still Bathurst C, but technically it is on the verge of possibly being a shared service. So for administration, specifically to the management team, that management transformation, in 2024, we had a training coordinator that had been budgeted in the HR department. So you can see an increase of 146 between 2024 and 2025, but that's because that position was reallocated to the transportation budget instead. That position is now filled, but it's just a reallocation of where that was budgeted. So that's a training coordinator. And then the rest of those increases are for the regular salary increases of everybody in that team combined. The engineering services are the increase of 3,300 is for regular salary increases. And then when you look at the training of 35,000 as a whole, that covers the training for full public works. So Mr. Abernathy and the team allocate budget allocation throughout the year to different sections, whether it be somebody at public works, somebody in engineering, or in anywhere, but the full budget is taken here for 35,000. The budget for public buildings has an increase of 40,000 in electricity, janitorial services of 10,000. Then we have other small supplies and services for 20,000, but we have regular salary decreases of 25,000 because they were allocated in other sections instead. So that's what makes the increase in public buildings of 69,000. And then inventory, we have a decrease of 25,000. It's because in 2024 they had specific purchases to upgrade the stock rooms and a few items that were required to be updated. Those were purchased, so now it's not allocated in 2025. Enabling us to reduce that budget. The equipment budget has an increase of 90,000. The first reason for that increase is for insurance for 17,000. That's the 10% based on the raise from last year. The fees also includes in insurance the license and plates required, as well as additional shop diagnosis license requirements. Then we have salaries, that's in reallocation for the fabricator that was split in multiple places in 2024, but it's a lot more concentration in the equipment, in the fleet department instead for 2025. And then we have the fuel. We're following the trend. It seems to be stabilizing. So for the general fund budget, we were able to decrease it by 15%. It was increased as an overall for the city, but for the equipment shop, it was decreased by 15,000 for full fuel of 425,000 for the fleet.
Okay, we have a question from Deputy Mayor Willett.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have a salary for 86,000 for increase for fabricator. Didn't we have a welder before?
I'll give you the... Okay, got the mic, Mr. Abernathy.
Thank you, Worship. So we had a heavy equipment mechanic. He had multiple licenses, but his classification would be fleet technician. So we have 6 fleet technicians. He was one of them that just happened to have multiple, like he has welding ticket and he had all kinds of other things. He was nearing the end of his career. He was interested in taking on more fabrication work, so we were asking him to do a lot more of that, which spurred the obvious need for a full-time fabricator in the shop. We found that we were contracting out a lot of small work that can be done in-house. We'd still have all the larger things we would still have to contract out. So at the end of the day, the fleet tech services was suffering a little bit having him do that full-time fabrication work. So that's why the full-time fabricator was allocated. So the full-time fabricator will not be a heavy equipment mechanic or a fleet technician. He will be a fabricator, a welder.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Burnett.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Through you to Mr. Abernathy. Do you have buildings? We have quite a few buildings in the city that are ours. And my question leads to security. Do you have people definitely hired for security? You know, we've been finding things in our washrooms here just down the hall from the public library that we shouldn't be finding in there. And we find now that we have people in our other buildings too sleeping and in doorways, blocking people getting in sometimes. I see in Moncton, they have a special crew that goes around and takes care of that. Do you see the need for that coming up, for a salary for somebody to secure or keep them secure?
Thank you, Richard. I do certainly see the need. I think right now we have employees such as myself and others at City Hall doing that type of work. We probably should be looking at something, although it hasn't been a discussion yet. Okay. Yeah, the police have certainly been contacted multiple times. They are just down the street, so it is convenient in this building. But we do have multiple buildings which I'm sure are suffering the same.
It is a concern of mine because we have the library, a lot of children in there using it, et cetera, and they go to use the washroom down the hall, and heaven knows what they're going to find sometimes. So maybe it is something we should, have further dialogue on.
Well, we just saved $95,000. Might be something that Mr. Abernathy can put on his request. It is true because it is getting out of hand, and I mean, having someone to just patrol and not have to have the police officers taken away from them being able to do their job, or city staff that has to be checking out every building before you lock out, and yet you got to go through every crew, under the stairs. You got to go everywhere before you actually lock up, because reality is they're everywhere.
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 Thank you.
Mr. Abernathy, can you take that in consideration?
Certainly will.
All right, we're still in budget. Okay. All right.
Just to come back, I heard the 95,000. So for the safety, it's not $95,000 saving. It's about 20 something.
I know.
So just to make sure we don't have that available money.
I know.
For roads and streets, so in the budget it's called summer maintenance, but it's really is for roadway surfaces. We have an increase of $139,000 for regular salary increases and personnel reallocation. So every year, Mr. Abernathy and his crew allocate where the hours will be spent, and as soon as that does that for their group, it creates a lot of reallocations between sections, but it doesn't mean that it's an increase or we're hiring more. It's just simply that its work is allocated more to one section than the other than previous years. So that is the reason for the summer maintenance section. For the storm sewer, it has an increase of $20,889. That is an increase in regular salary increase for $10,000, but then additional asphalt for $10,000, because when they make cuts, we now have the ability to fix ourselves and do a lot more quicker work of that. So the asphalt was increased by $10,000 within that one. Snow and ice removal has been increased by $126,000 for a total of $1,273,000 in snow removal. 105 of that is for salary reallocation and regular CPI, so more crew is assigned to snow removal. 51,000 for the purchase of salt, so the tender came in higher than what we had previous year, so that was increased by 51,000.
Madam Gauvin, before you keep going, just out of curiosity and question here. So when we look at, I'm looking cost-wise, sidewalks, culvert and drainage, so even street cleaning and flushing. So we're only increasing it by $500 for street cleaning and flushing, or is that all pure salary? Or is that money put towards street cleaning and flushing?
Is the money put towards street cleaning and flushing?
Okay. So $16,671 for street cleaning and flushing, to me, is not a lot of money. I cannot tell you how people were not happy in my subdivision because it was not cleaned this past summer. A lot of people, I think it's very low for the size of kilometers that we have in the city limits. Sidewalks. So what does that mean, sidewalks? Is it cleaning the sidewalks, or is it sidewalk repairs? And if it's sidewalk repairs, $32,000 for all of Bathurst is not a lot of money. Mr. Abernathy, I would actually go to you. What's that sidewalk repair? And then like the street cleaning? I just don't believe that the amounts are for the size of this city.
Thank you, Worship. So are those total GLs for sidewalk?
Yes, but it doesn't include capital investments, though.
Yeah. And also for street cleaning, that's the total GL? Okay, so I think there might be a little bit of a misallocation for salaries there. 16,000 seems very light for street cleaning. So basically what happens when she mentioned the reallocation of salaries, we have a number of employees at Public Works, 50 plus full-time, plus another 9 seasonal. Whenever we allocate them for the budgets, every dollar of their salary has to be allocated somewhere. So there's a bit of an estimate that has to be done as to where everybody's salary goes. As far as street cleaning, we did have a lot of breakdowns this year, so that would have reduced the amount that had gone to street cleaning. But 16,000 is quite low just in the salary that we would pay our street cleaner, because they're working 7 days a week for a period of at least 25 weeks. So just like I think there's probably an allocation that get mixed up a little bit there. We did purchase a second street sweeper as well this year. So it's called an AnyNet system. It goes on the front of a loader. So there's going to be additional salary allocated for that employee as well. That probably was not taken into account here whenever we did that as well. So the addition of that unit what it's going to do is pick up that really hard compacted grit that's on the street, so that it'll allow our street sweeper to do a much faster and better job and have to go dump less frequent. So we should see a pretty significant improvement in our quality of our street sweeping this year. Looking at this money, it's a little deceiving because we're going to allocate people there as needed. So that budget very well could be $45,000 at the end of the year if those allocations don't.
Okay.
So we're not actually purchasing anything for that. That's mostly salaries, right?
Okay.
And then as far as sidewalks is concerned, it's similar. However, there would be codes under sidewalks for actual concrete replacement, actual asphalt replacement for supplies and things like that. We have historically had very little money allocated to sidewalks. It's just kind of the way things have always been. A lot of the sidewalks that you see repaired are due to utility cuts, which had to be replaced because there was a water leak or something like that, and so there was a fresh section of sidewalk poured next to it. We're really not where we need to be as far as maintenance of our sidewalks. There's no doubt.
And I totally agree. And I mean, if you look at tourism, because we do have quite a few kilometers, and I think that our sidewalks truly need some tender love and care. And I know we're all about balancing a budget, but I mean, based on this budget, we're doing a lot of big spendings in other places where I believe it should be allocated to other priorities. Councillor Willett, or Deputy Mayor Willett, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. While we're on sidewalks, we got the sidewalk on Vanier that's been closed for a long time. I know it's not supposed to be our problem. It's supposed to be CN's problem, but definitely it's been way too long that's been closed, and we need to get something done with that. You know, like it just doesn't make sense at all that sidewalk is still not fixed. So.
Thank you, Worship. So there is a tender being prepared to replace that bridge. We did receive funding from the provincial government to do so. It's a bit of a gray area with the ownership of that sidewalk. DTI technically owns the bridge that goes over the tracks. However, this is a separate structure off of that bridge. So they did agree to fund the replacement of it, even though it's quasi, in their opinion, the property of the city of Bathurst. So they did agree to fund it. I'm not sure if they will agree to fund it again in the future. The reason this money was allocated last year, we were hoping to get the project done last year. We're currently waiting on CN, who have requirements for the actual construction portion of it that have to go into the tender. So we're waiting on receiving specifications from CN for that work. Apparently that can take a significant amount of time. Mm-hmm.
It's not safe in the wintertime to walk on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody's going to slip and get hurt and get killed on the other side. So you got to get something done there.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. It's been way too long. All right. Before I go to Councillor Burnett, I'll go to our CAO, Mr. Pettigrew.
Thank you, Worship. Just going to follow up. We can, Mr. Abernath and I will coordinate our CN contact. There's a new CN contact, so we'll have a quick follow-up to see if we can speed up this process, get his help or get his assistance in assisting us with his engineering and public safety department. So we can do that follow-up.
Okay. And Mr. Abernathy, from my point of view, if we could look at sidewalks and see if we can increase that budget. I know we're in the process of wanting to balance a budget, but I think our sidewalks are in desperate need. We have a question from Councillor Burnett.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. On a positive note, though, you did quite a job the other day at the Heritage Museum with the broken pipes and the water lines and that. And I drove by there today, and your utility cuts now, the way you're fixing them, excellent compared to what used to be happening. It's smooth and it's done very, very professional. So on the positive side, I would just like to throw that in there, that the utility cuts, the equipment that you guys bought and the asphalt that we now have access to means we don't have to drive all winter with gravel on the utility cuts.
Yeah.
No.
I think by reinvesting, and that's what's so important, is by reinvesting in public works, like we've been reinvested in others. And I think in the past few years, that's the department that has fallen short. And by being able to buy the proper equipment, we can get work done, and good job, because their staff are doing amazing work, but they're working with what they have. So I think we need their department is a department that we need to look at carefully to continue. More money, exactly. Okay.
Just to complete the snow removal, the last item that I was about to say is that there were decreases in hired equipment based on historical trend with multiple years. The last line that was to complete that slide. Street lighting. This is a section where every subunit has to pay for the usage of electricity based on the number of the electricity for their street lights that are in. So depending on where you live, you might have more lights that were requested by citizens at the time versus another one that is more spaced between those streets. So for 2025 in North Tedigush and Bathurst Big River, the same budget was maintained because we're still creating a trend. So the 42,000 and 79,000 are still as is. The reason why we can't create a trend, even though it's our third budget, is because the first year, when the invoices came in from the province, they billed us for a certain amount of lights, the electricity that came off of them. But then in 2024, we received a credit because they had overcharged us. So we're trying to create a trend, but it's kind of flawed for the first 2 years because of those invoices, because it's very complicated of where that line ends and which meter counts the usage for that lighting. So that's why we're still creating a trend. The budget hasn't changed. We should be fine at those amounts based on what we had initially projected for the number of lights. For 2025, for the old Bathurst, that one has a total budget of 390,000. That's an electricity increase of 30,850 for the total streetlight budget of 512,000. A lot of that budget is for electricity. For traffic services, it has a total decrease of 37,000 for wage reallocation and slight decrease in the required supplies. It includes the street signs, traffic lane markings, and traffic signals, and railway crossing signals. The parking, really the only line that we use in our own city budget is off-street parking. We also have parking meters, sure, but everything is put to off-street parking because it would be splitting hairs by dividing it in multiple ones. So the budget was decreased slightly by $2,000 for the hired equipment budget, but it's pretty much the same as the previous year for that one. Public transportation, for the public transit, it has a budget of 94,000 versus 42,000 2024. In that presentation that is circling, 2024 had a partial year versus 2025 has a full year. If that budget doesn't go ahead, there are administrative fees that are allocated for staff there, that if they do not work on public transit or transportation, that they would be reallocated to other services because their workload would be reallocated to other ones. So right now, These fees are shared between, in the budget that's being circulated between Bathurst and Belle Bay. But if it becomes, if that becomes refused, then those administrative fees would have to be reallocated, a lot of it in other sections, not the whole amount, but that portion of it. And it might change the distribution of the fees for the other sections of the budget. So corporate service fees, community services, and all of those other sections. So that one is one that has to be looked at for the November 20th approval or not.
So we have a question from Councillor LeBlanc.
Merci, Madame la mairesse. Je ne sais pas si toi, tu auras la réponse. Peut-être le député maire
Give the
Willett.
mic to Deputy Mayor Willett as well, because he's on the committee. So
Oui.
ask your question and
C'est ça. Ma question est pour justement le transport en commun. Y a-t-il pas eu une présentation là-dessus, puis avec des nouveaux frais, puis plein de nouvelles affaires comparé à la présentation de l'an dernière?
Oui, à travers la table. Il y a eu une présentation. Il y a eu des certains graphes ou programmes qui étaient mis, si qu'on irait tout seul ou si Belle Bay viendrait avec nous autres. Ça fait qu'on n'a rien de concret encore. Je pense qu'on va juste avoir le 20. Ils sont supposés avoir d'autres présentations le 20. Pour moi, la question, c'est... J'avais demandé la question déjà, le 51 900 pour 2024. On l'a-tu actuellement payé à la CSR? Parce qu'eux autres disent non, qu'on ne l'a pas payé à la CSR.
On a été facturé, ça a été payé.
Ça a été facturé puis ça a été payé. OK.
Oui.
Puis on n'a pas eu de transportation. Ça veut dire qu'on devrait avoir un crédit sur ça pour 2025.
S'il y a un surplus en 2024, il va apparaître en 2026 parce que ça veut dire que cette section-là va faire un surplus. Ou si ça ne va pas de l'avant, là, il faudrait être remboursé pour la portion de transport qui n'a pas été de l'avant.
OK.
Est-ce que je peux peut-être demander plus précisément, est-ce que l'argent qui a été alloué jusqu'à date comblerait le budget nécessaire?
Pour moi, non. Je pense pas que ça serait assez pour le budget nécessaire, surtout si on va pour nous autres tout seuls. Si on va juste la ville de Bathurst, ça serait pas assez. Mais pour moi, la réalité, c'est qu'on serait mieux de le faire pour la ville de Bathurst. C'est comme pour le transport en commun.
Est-ce qu'on va pouvoir avoir une présentation là-dessus en quelque temps pour voir exactement ce qui a été présenté ou
à la CSA, ils vont nous présenter quelque chose le 20.
ils vont vous le présenter, mais est-ce que nous autres, le Conseil, on va pouvoir avoir accès à ça?
Je vous suggérais, pour sauver du temps, de venir nous rencontrer, de venir directement à la réunion, si vous êtes intéressé.
Très intéressé.
Oui.
Oui.
All right. Okay, so, Councillor Branch.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I had actually replaced the mayor at that meeting, so I do have some additional information. So one thing is like that $90-some thousand that was allocated, that's our portion based on a 7-hour schedule. But the Service Commission and Belle Bay both want a 12-hour schedule if we move ahead. So we'd actually be looking at something closer to $136,000. And when we questioned the $50,000, I went back asking for clarification because when we questioned it at the meeting, they said the city had not been invoiced. But when we came back, I checked with Sonia and she believes the city was invoiced. So we're looking for that $50,000+. And the number we're looking at, Sonia mentioned that also, that that was financing for the whole year, but they would only be operating for 3 months. So really, we shouldn't need that whole amount, right? So theoretically, that $50,000 could be coming close to what would be needed. But it's really not the first year that's a problem. The problem is the funding from other levels of government starts disappearing and that starts increasing. So just based on what they're proposing, like Bathurst would be up to about $250,000 contribution in 2027. And again, I'm not sure how well costed that is, right? It could be more. And when we were discussing that around the table, like Belle Bay said, 2027, that was the most that they could do. Again, now we can't speak for them, but that's what they brought up at the public meeting, right? They said the number from 2027 is the absolute top, and they don't even know how they would get there. So the long-term prospects for the system. I don't know, I agree with Deputy Mayor Willett. I think we'd be better off to look at what the city of Bathurst can do, look at the study and see what we can do on our own instead of partnering, and then that way we can control our own destiny.
Are you good, Councillor LeBlanc? All right, so I'm going to cut some mics. Councillor Anderson?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm against this amount completely. You know, last year when the Regional Service Commission presented their projections for the next 3 years, the cost, Bathurst was up to around the $600,000 mark. And that was at a 50-50 split with Bell Bay. And now, from my understanding, Bell Bay doesn't want to do a 50-50 split anymore. So we're going to be looking upwards of $800,000 a year. And where's that coming from? We
But
don't.
the whole projection changed. There's no taxi bus, there's 3 buses. There's been a lot of changes in this new, everything has changed from last year. So what they presented last year and what they will be presenting on the November 20th is completely different.
Then we should not be even looking at something like this if we don't have the information
I
to make
understand
informed
that.
decisions.
So we're not voting tonight, and tonight Sonia has to put in the budget what was sent to her, but this is not a finalized budget. We will be voting on a finalized budget.
I realize we're not voting
Yeah.
tonight. I realize what's
Yeah.
going on tonight, but my issue is we're paying on a hypothetical thing. We paid out $50-some thousand that last year for this year. Now another $95,000 for 2025. Like, that's money that should be staying in our community, especially where nothing is happening and we don't know what's going to transpire. And I feel that the regional service should be here doing a presentation to our entire council so that people are informed. We can't make decisions if we're not informed on it.
All right. Councillor Branch?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I just want to mention, I do agree with Councillor Anderson on that, because that's what they had mentioned at the meeting also, is that, yeah, they took out the taxi buses and they cut the service area back to make it more attractive, but the end goal is to, again, go to those outlying areas, add the taxi buses. And when that happens, when you look at the way the cost share is done, the operating costs get exponentially higher the farther you go from Bathurst, but Bathurst always pays more of the operating costs because of our tax base and our population, right? So the more area we service, the worse it's going to be for Bathurst. So yes, I can see where it would be, instead of $250,000 in 3 years, like you say, $800,000 in 4 or 5 years.
Yep. All right.
Good? Okay. Next section is environmental health services. That only includes the solid waste collection and disposal section of it. So for 2024, there's a total decrease of $89,000. For collection services, there's a decrease of refuse services because the tender came lower than 2024. So we are already paying less in 2024. But at the time, we didn't know that, so we had budgeted higher. So when it came in, we're now ready to decrease the budget for 2025 for a total of $399,000 2025 budget, which is a decrease of $61,000. Disposal is a service that is paid on the tonnage to the Regional Service Commission for their tipping fees. So they are still at $72 per ton, and the expense is distributed according to which subunits the costs are, for the total of $252,000. The recycling is where there is the savings of $28,300, because circular materials is now collecting the recycle and are paying the tipping fees and the associated costs. So that creates a savings in our budget of $28,300 for that one. Environmental development services. So if we start with the planning and zoning, compared to the budget, the planning administration has a decrease of $31,000, but that's because in 2024 we had allocated a budget for aerial pictures taken by Service New Brunswick. They do that once in a while, where they update all of the aerial pictures and we share the costs with them. So we had that in 2024. That is taken out for $45,000. But there is also the salary increases and for that team that counterbalance the total savings. For the Planning Advisory Commission, there's an increase of $6,000 for a total of $10,000 budget. That is because of the increase in the allotted stipends for the PAC committee members. Beautification and rehabilitation of lands is for potential demolitions. There's also the same amount in cost recovery because it's pretty much all recovered through the province of New Brunswick. Rentals has an increased budget of $33,698 for wages and snow removal at the waterfront. So for the waterfront, the total increase is $17,000, and the second floor police station for usage costs has an increase of $14,000. Altogether, that's what creates the increase in the rentals. For community development services from the RSC, that's part of the allocation through the RSC budget for the total $10,188. So as per their budget, there's an increase of $1,058 compared to 2024. For the Economic Development Administration, it has an increase of $73,000. So in 2024, we had only budgeted a partial position for the Economic Development Manager. Now that person is hired, so it is now a full year salary, creating a portion of the increase for administration. In addition to these fees, we also pay $66,880 to the RSC for economic development as a region. That's an increase of $17,000 compared to 2024. And for grants, so when we had the previous initiatives, that's not a grants budget that we were talking about earlier. That really is for the incentives that we are providing for economic development based on the old initiatives packages. That's still there, that we have lingering ones that were multi-year, so we have to finish paying those off, although they're not active anymore. The ones that are already active are still being paid accordingly. It does not include initiatives for the HAF, for the Housing Accelerator Fund, the simple being the expense will be cost recovered 100% by the revenues, so they kind of net each other out. We don't already have a good enough feel to put a budget amount for 2025, but it will have no impact on the net inside the budget. But it does not include the HAFs in that amount. For tourism, so the first line, obviously, we have, the third line, we have the contribution to the Regional Service Commission, which have regional tourism for a total of $72,000. That's an increase of $20,000 compared to 2024. So that's external tourism. But as for the tourism done by the city, the full revenue from the tourism accommodation levy is being budgeted for new investments. So the first year, we didn't know how much we were going to collect. A portion of that money we had allocated towards paying the Regional Service Commission invoice. Now that we have a feel of what it is now fully allocated to new money, new investments in tourism.
I will just make it very clear, I completely disagree with this. It's not like if the city is not in financial situation that we cannot be taking that money elsewhere.
But we're not paying any more for that, using that. It's all for new incentive, all new money for new tourism.
New money to fix a boardwalk. Why is a boardwalk not being part of the operation for Parks and Recreation? Why is the beach sidewalk not parts of recreation? That's that department. So we're taking money to be put in somewhere else. Councillor Burnett?
Did I go back to the previous slide? I must a question.
There's a next slide coming to, there's a full package for tourism to be able to look at the whole budget, and then it'll be up to council to decide what they want to do with it. That is what staff proposes, but it doesn't mean that council has to agree with it. No. So there is something that we are proposing that is emanating from the first capital budget, but if we're going directly for the additional, I wanted to present the overall tourism that is here.
All right, so the old slide, you want to go back to the other slide?
Please?
Can you go back, Madame?
Oh, the previous one?
Yes, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you meant the next one.
No, previous. I've been asked a couple times by people who are now part of Bathurst in our new territories about when we're going to start enforcing the unsightly premises bylaws. I know that they have to be changed, but when somebody said to me the other day, you come from the airport and you go by some of those unsightly properties, that's not a very good first impression, and I would like to see them cleaned up. So I've been asking now for over a year or so. Are we going to get at some of those soon?
Thank you, Your Worship. There has been discussions. I know the provincial unsightly premises inspector and ours are discussing, so I'll get Mr. McLaughlin to be able to give an update on that.
Good evening. Yes, that's something we have to prioritize for 2025 with our city solicitor. That's something we already look at. Few bylaws we have to extend to the new area, and as soon that bylaw will be adopted, probably sometime in the first 6 months of 2025, and after that we'll have the authority to enforce in the new territories.
Because we don't have the authority right now.
No.
Okay.
No.
So early in 2025,
I would say within the first 6 months of the 2025.
and then we can start the demolition.
We'd like to be ready after the spring,
Yeah.
springtime, when there is a lot more demand when the snow is gone.
I'll pass that news on to those who have asked. Thank you very much. And I, like you, don't like to use the levy money for other things than tourism.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I'll go to the next slide because it seems to be the discussion of that needs to be answered for now. So right now, what is budgeted using the operating budget? Because remember, we have an operating budget, we have a capital budget, and if we want to pay cash for capital budget, we need to transfer money to it. So that's why we divide it in two. So the section for tourism operating, we have a total allocation of 110 right now, and I'll give more details. And then you will see further in the expenses in fiscal, the balance of 140,000. So the way that tourism has been evolving, first year, we couldn't plan a budget. We planned a budget, conservative one, because we weren't sure how it would pan out. Thank God we did, because that was the year COVID hit. So it took a few years to get a real number or a real trend of what they could collect. So what we would do in previous years is allocate expenses as they went. We had a few requests that came in where it was opportune to classify them as tourism. Yes, they are tourism, and it does not take away from that at all. But there were no projects allocated. It was just the money was available. We had no direct expenses associated to them, so they were available to give out to third parties that had requested for it. So we have a few that were named tonight, and yes, they are investment in tourism. There's no denying it. So right now, at this stage of the game, in a budget process, we should be able to allocate expenses from the get-go. The issue that we're coming up to now is that staff waits throughout the year for potential requests coming from the outside, and then come October, November, that money is available and not used or allocated. We have those projects in our back pocket that also classify as tourism because it's beautifying our waterfront. We said so last year when we approved the last minute budget for the waterfront. We said, yes, waterfront would need to be upkept. So we said, yes, we'll release that money. They were able to start the work, but some of the invoices are lagging, are overlapping in 2024 instead of 2023 because it's so last minute. So when we wait too much in the year in case there's a potential request coming in, it's very difficult to turn around and make those projects happen because sometimes we need contractors to help. Sometimes it's work that needs to be done at Yahal Beach that can only be done during the summer that we missed the time frame because there can't be snow. So a whole bunch of reasons. So that's why when we do this budget, we have a portion of it that we saw projects that could be done. So the bottom one was for Yahal Beach building upgrades, which we've always said tourism would classify for tourism, waterfront boardwalk, and Santa Ana crosswalk. So when we come to the capital budget, those projects are listed there And the only way we could balance the capital budget was to use this bucket, because it is tourism investments. It's just we're transferring capital money to pay for tourism investments so that staff can start working on it beginning of 2025 and that goes done. In the operating side of it, we have the Titan booth for hotel, 13,000. From the branding exercise, we'll be able to invest more in continuing tourism signage for 55,000. And then there's money that's still left unallocated of 42,000. But what we're trying to do is allocate money from the budget process from the get-go for the year. These are the recommendations that were brought from staff. If council wants to do something else, that's still a possibility. But what we're trying to do is budget it from the get-go so that we don't have money that when we come November, December, that we're not running to find what we could be doing with that available money to reconcile that
So we have-
in the year.
We have a question from Councillor LeBlanc, but before I go to Councillor LeBlanc, when we first started tourism levy and the money started coming in, we were taking that money and we were paying the Regional Service Commission with that money. And 2 years ago, a request was put in to say, don't take tourism money to pay tourism. We want to keep it at the city so we could put it towards tourism. So we've been doing tourism levy for about 4 or 5 years now, and that was even before new council came in. But that money was being used to pay the Regional Service Commission at the time. Conseiller Leblanc?
Merci, Madame la Mairesse. I'll say this one in English, make sure everyone, well, as many people as possible can understand. Here's my vision on this. Honestly, if you can make the numbers work, I'm going to be straight out. I don't care where it comes from. But there are things that I hold that are near and dear to me. And if, you know, like, I see the crosswalk there. I understand the principle, but to me that's as little touristic as possible. So that one there is, really bugs me, but I understand, again, the budget side of it. But I can't see any of this being to the detriment of hospitality days that brought 10,000 people to our city and is growing. The Corvette show, all the other little things, the curling club, you know, that physically bring people to our city with money in their pockets who spend in our city. That roughly $60,000 I just talked about there, it has to happen for me. And again, I'm one of 9 councillors, but that to me is really where that money for the levy, if we're talking what Councillor Brunette said earlier, it has to go towards tourism. Those 3 things are concrete tourism events that bring money and bring people and money to our city. So it has to go there. That being said, Sonia, you and your team do phenomenal work. If you tell me, look, it's just how I have to put it in the books, but all those things are going to happen, me personally, again, my councillor colleagues could all say, you're nuts, JF, we're not going to support you, but that to me is a must. So I just wanted to make that clear that I'm kind of like Madam Mayor on this, but if it's a question of budgeting, as long as those other things that are important for tourism happen, call it what you will.
So the way that I could see that happening, if that's the way that council wants to go, if there's initiatives in what's being presented in this reconciliations that council would prefer not doing, and allocate in the grants section, a funding that is allocated for tourism grants, then it's budgeted in the, as you said, I have to allocate it accordingly, but it still balances to 250. We allocate grants, towards tourism in the grants budget. So we would increase the grants budget and decrease this budget by taking the savings from whatever we take off of this list. So right now we have 42,000 that's not allocated to anything. Automatically, if council wishes, we could increase the grants budget by 42,000 and decrease this budget. It still comes to the same tourism investments towards our city. this is simply the reconciliation that was made, and that's what we will bring for consideration is how much you want for grant, and are you okay with these these initiatives for tourism, or do you want to reallocate it in a different spread? That is definitely a possibility.
In my mind, tourism is our trails. That brings a ton of people up here. Skidoo, bikes, walk, all that. The three that I previously mentioned, and I'm sure I'm forgetting others. The Titans, guaranteed. Those booths, they help. They bring people. Signage, of course, that fits in there. So, like I said, I'll let my councillor colleagues go chime in on this. But for me, like I said, those certain little items we have to find a budget for them somewhere.
Okay. So, Deputy Mayor Willett?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm in the same way. I look at it. If I look at the list on the right-hand side, it comes up to $315,000. $315,000. I figure we can call it a levy because we're picking up the hotel levy to promote other tourist stuff that's going on around town. If we start repairing and doing our main repairs with the tourism levy, we're taking away from what the tourism levy was meant to be as far as I'm concerned. And if I read it right on the government website, the tourism levy, it's up to us to figure out what we're going to do with it. And I think Councillor Leman is spot on. Things like Hospitality Days, the Corvette Show, the new business that we got set up on the causeway, that's the stuff that the tourism levy. And tell me if I'm right, but if we don't use the tourism levy, at the end of the year, the money goes back in the coffers.
Nope.
It doesn't go back in the coffers?
No.
Where does it go?
We have to spend it on tourism for $250. We have to justify it for tourism. So that's why at the end of the year, if we don't know how much will be allocated, staff runs to make investments in things that we heard would be.
So then we should have a policy. If we don't have it set by a certain date, then we can use it for that stuff. But until that certain date, then we should not be using it for that. We should be, there's other stuff that's going to come up. We got a golf tournament, national golf tournament that's coming to town this year. So there's a whole bunch of stuff. Everything's new. We're just starting to build, and we need to keep that fund there for that. So that's my opinion anyway. So.
All right. So in the slide, when we come to consideration, just for council decision, what I will be looking for is which item do you want to take off this list? Because right now, remember, we don't balance in the budget. It took everything to bring it already to that amount. So it means that stuff needs to be taken off. And in the capital side, it was the only way that we could make those three projects happen. So I will be looking at it as if council wants to not do some of the things to provide increased tourism grants, I will be looking for an amount, obviously, for grants of what we want to put, but also what do we take off of this list to be able to reconcile the 250 so that we still come up with the same net at the end of the day.
Well, further along, we're going to the Capital Board Board. Remember, we have that $1.53 million that we want to shave from, so we can look at that too before we start even making a decision. So we got more to go through.
Yeah, so we will come back on capital.
Yeah, we will.
Recreational and cultural services. So that one we have two slides because there's quite a bit of sections. Starting with the administration, there's savings of $11,437 because in 2024 we have the completion of the recreational study that will be completed by the end of 2024, so we don't expect amounts to have to be paid 2025. For the Aquatic Center Commission, we have an allocation of the budget of $630,000, And then in the Yohal Beach, we have an allocation of 110,000, which is an increase of 11,000 for that one. For the skating rink and arena, which is basically the civic center, we have an increase of 222,000. That includes 150,000 for 2 new temporary parks employee. Don't forget that they also do the ice rink changes during the winter when it's in season, and regular salary increases. We also have 16,000 for additional snow removal, and 56,000 in really a whole bunch of expenses throughout, which are really small amounts, but they're spread in there's many accounts in the KCI, but it includes repairs on sections of the roof, concessions equipment needing replacement, and higher food costs. I see light blinking, so before I switch slide, I figure I should wait.
Sorry. Councillor Brunet.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. How'd that young lady do down at the Yohal Beach this summer with her kayak rentals and all the thing that she was going to do? Did it work out for her?
I will
Pass it
through Mr. Pettigrew.
Mr. Wilbur.
Thank you, Your Worship. Excuse me. East Coast Adventures, as far as we've been told in chatting with them following their season, they had a very successful first year, and we've already been in discussions to have them return in 2025. So I think all signs point to the fact that they had a great year. They look forward to continuing to build that business down at the beach.
Weather-wise, it was a great summer, and Yohal has nobody there unless you have a great summer. But hopefully it helped them, and they will be back. Yeah.
Yohal was busy this year.
Pardon?
Yohal was busy this year.
Oh, I know. I would drive down often.
I know.
Yeah.
Hopefully we can find a way to invest in our facilities down there.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yeah. They're aging quite. Yeah.
Yeah.
No other question for this slide? Okay. So the second section of recreational includes the parks and playgrounds. So parks maintenance has an increase of 17,000 for additional services and supply for additional trail works in 2025. Daily Points has savings of 27,000 for a decrease in temporary staff, but the Promenade Waterfront has an increase of 68,000 for casuals and student working at the waterfront. When we did the budget in 2024, it was under budgeted for the number of hours and the number of students and the casuals that work at the waterfront to make all of those activities come to fruition. So that was corrected in 2025. And then the Pavilion Gym has a budget of 4,136 for the full recreational budget of 4,324,000 for 2025. The cultural section includes 2 items. The first one being the historic sites. So the first one is the old post office for a total budget of 15,722. That is the work and the electricity that is paid through the city. So it is our building. So we do pay for electricity costs, and when we send employees there to do field work, that's where it gets allocated. Then we have the library, where we have a total budget of 77,389. But on top of that, the library is part of an agreement because they are in City Hall that we are responsible for their budget. So that's why it's not in the grants request when they come. It is truly part of our budget and our expenses. We make the purchase, and that's through the library agreement. So that's why we popped out from their request when they came what is different from previous year, because they always have just regular maintenance, janitorial, regular supplies and stuff like that. But this is what they're requesting additional to their regular budget. So for the library, they have 5 new circulation computers, laptop, and 1 public use laptop for programming purposes. So that would equate to close to 7,000. New patron furniture that is more functional, durable, and modern for 7,000. And then they would like to increase their supplies for programming budget from 1,000 to 1,500 because of the increase from 25 in 2023 to 205 in 2024. And then a new refrigerator for staff and the healthy snack program because the last one broke in their room. So that the total that's there doesn't make the total $77,000 because it does also include electricity and all of that when you look at their full budget, but those are the additional requests that they made for 2025. There's a link.
Councillor Anderson?
Thank you. Just to clarify, Sonia, when they came to do their presentation in September for their request for 2025, the requests are different than what's in there. So is this additional on top of the requests that they made for the grants?
When you flip their paper package that they left,
Yeah?
that is the description of the full.
Because like I have it here, and they had put like, they wanted $12,975 for new modern furniture.
Yes, but they already have a budget there. So those are the variances. So we didn't present what they would normally get because they would always get something. So those are the variances that create the increase from their budget. From normally they would get, like last year they got 68,000. So right now the net is 8,000. So what we're presenting here is the bigger variances of what they would normally get compared to what they.
But when you're saying 68,000, you're including electricity and
Yes,
stuff
yes.
like that in there. So I think we need to cut that out just for kind of clarity's sake,
Sure.
because we can't control the price of electricity, obviously. Like I know when they came in September, their total request was $23,092. And that included $8,617 for computer subscriptions, $12,975 for new modern furniture, and $1,500 for programming supplies. So like I see, like there's a line in there for furniture at $7,100, and there's the programming supplies for $1,500 in here. So I'm just kind of confused as to, are we going with this request that they presented in September, or these requests that are on your slide?
What I will do is I will reconcile it in another way when I come back on the 25th.
Okay.
The full budget is still, when we enter our budget in our system, their request is incorporated for the full $77,389. So I will reconcile the full library budget for more detail where you can see where their expenses are within that budget.
Right, because
better.
when you look at your breakdown on the slide, your breakdown
It
on the
is
slide is different to the request that they made in September. So I just wanted to make sure that,
So the full budget is for $77,000, but for the 25th, I will reconcile it in a way where you can spot it way better for them for sure.
great, thank you.
No problem. The last one in recreational is the contribution for the Regional Service Commission. The $28,000 includes $5,800 for the administration to the RC itself, and then we have $22,630 that goes for our portion of the cost for the Sportplex. Then we have the other programs for a total of $70,500, which is an increase of $7,000 compared to the 2024 for the hire of students to deliver the summer programs. In fiscal services, that is the last major section. We have the debt charges for a total decrease of $491,000. So the most significant reason is due to the decrease in the principal debenture cost with its associated interest, obviously. And in this line item, the subunits need to be looked at separately. So when we look at Bathurst Big River Local District, the total amount is for $101,339, is because they have a leftover debt that is almost, and I think there's 2 years done, for the debenture they acquired for Santa Ana Rec Center. And then they have a capital leasing arrangement for 2 different fire trucks where they lease a truck through Royal Bank and the fees are allocated here. So for them, that is their debt reimbursement. However, for Bathurst, obviously we have our own old debt that is $40,000 in short-term borrowing. Then we have the interest for long-term borrowing, $208,000, and then the principal on the long-term debt is $1.6 million. And then on the debenture discounts, which is the cost to acquire new debentures, we have a budget of $8,000 allocated to it. We have an increase in the banking fees from 70,000 to 103. That is for the merchant fees. So as the fees increase for, when you go upstairs and you pay through global payments and all of those merchant devices, there is an allocation of the fees, and they are getting quite high. So in 2025, we are up for the option of renewal for our current merchant supplier. So we will be going out to see if we can get better fees, because it is an increase in our budget. But right now, without knowing, we have to budget with that increase in mind. And then the last one is just for other debt charges. That really is for Service New Brunswick fees and different fees that come in. Very small fees, but multiple ways. In the transfer to our own reserve funds and agencies, really the only line that is in there is when we talked about the capital budget. We have a transfer of a total $2,570,000 for capital purchases paid cash. So since the yearly capital debt cost has decreased approximately $900,000 over the past 4 years, that 5 years if you include the projection for 2026, the amount is reallocated to purchasing equipment and capital purchases using cash. So in addition to the 2023 budget of $1.5 million that is used to pay for additional. So we have 900 that was already planned that we would pay cash as part of our capital reinvestment strategy through an increased capital budget. We have also allocated 1.5 million from the 2023 surplus, and that number, obviously we'll discuss it again, but that number also includes the transfer for the tourism 3 projects that we would be paying cash in 2025 if approved. So the last one is for sick leave and retirement for the same 350, which is our portion of the liability we have to put aside for. And then the bad debt, we have a provision of 15,000 for bad debt should it occur. So the results for each local, now that we went through all of the sections. So for the revenue, we have a total revenue of $37,902,000 with an allocated expenses right now of $38,173,000. We still have a deficit of $270,000, which as a total, which does not include an increase for Ward 2, which as part of the transition would see increases over 6 years for their portion. So I have a slide for tax consideration in a few slides. But overall, right now, we still don't balance by $270,000. And I can tell you that although we got the $1.9 million increase in the warrant, it was still, I can tell you that we had budget count ruts, because we had a first round of cuts internally because we were not budgeting at first by a lot, because I mean, we see that we've been doing really good financially the past few years. We've been maintaining it, but it's not like we can just let go off the pedal and say, okay, we have a whole bunch of money all of a sudden because we're healthy. There's a lot of projects that as a city or investment that we can make, but we still had to make choices before coming here, not to come with any fluff. All the fluff we've kind of cut. We've only questioned a few things.
I do have a question. So in here, we have the 910 and we have the $1.52 million. So we want to go to the capital borrowing board for $500,000 to get a lot of the requests that you have here. So why can't we balance it and then just borrow more at the capital borrowing board? Why do we have to take the 1.520 off towards the debt? Not towards the debt, but to pay cash for all the additional requests. I understand where you're going, but if we have that funds there, we're not balancing. I mean, you're the accountant, explain it to me, because we could take the $140,000, we could put that in there, and then we can borrow $640,000 as opposed to $500,000.
We pay interest on it. So as part of in the capital budget that I presented in October, I'll do a quick summary when we get there. But don't forget that any time that we borrow for anything, A lot of the reimbursement, there's a lot of money going through interest, and the debentures that are coming in right now are coming at a higher rate than what we used to get them in previous years on top of that. So we decrease a lot of our purchasing power. So all we're doing, and I have a slide especially for that, we started in 2019 or 20 with $3 million debt. We've been decreasing how much it costs us per year for that line item. We've been transferring that cost to purchase cash. All we've been doing is, instead of paying it in debt, we have the same total that we pay cash with more purchasing power. But by the time we're done, the same expense of $3 million that used to be 100% debt will now be $3 million for stuff that we pay cash that gets invested. So the goal is to increase. So if we start reborrowing more and not following that plan, we will delay that future budget that we want to have for just allocation of a $3 million.
I understand where you're going, and we have shaved 46% off our debt. So we are doing, and we're going in the right direction. But if we look at Public Works as an example, we have so much aging infrastructure, we should be spending more than $1 million in that department. We're not. So we're cutting in each department. So by the time we shave the debt by 2040, we're going to have to borrow $10 million just to fix the messes that we've overlooked and not fixed throughout as we're moving forward. For me personally, I understand where you're going and we're not balancing, but I think that $500,000 renovation for Roussel Neal Complex, put it for next year, put it for another year, and put it towards something else. So, I mean, this list was brought to us for us to balance and to look at it and say we're not balancing, but I think there's money that could be moved around.
And
That's
that
my
obviously
take
will
on
be
it.
budgets. Ultimately, it becomes council's decision on the list. That is what we are coming for recommendations for staff about what we identified as a priority. Council can absolutely disagree of where it is. At the end of the day, the law requires me to balance, but you have the choice of how we go about it to balance. So keep that in mind, and I also have in the considerations for council that slide about all the projects that we pay cash. You will be able to look at them again.
Yeah.
So those are brought again as well at the end.
Councillor LeBlanc?
Thank you. In that 270 that we're missing, is everything that you presented included, like all the grant requests, everything? If we were to take 100% of that, is that what this is? We'd be down 270?
For the 270, what's included for the grant is the total, same as 2024, total budget of 165.
So there
that's
was
where in
another page
consideration
there
you
where
need
you
to-
had like 315,000 of requests for this year.
It would, if you choose to increase the grants budget and not take it from anywhere else, the deficit of 270 would be bigger.
Well, that's what I'm asking. What would it be like? I'm not sure. We're in any position to take. Is it total? Is it 315 the extra that was asked, or is it 165? Is it part of that? That's what I need to understand.
The 165.
The extra 315,
This-
I believe.
The slide will come back just so that you can have it in the
Yeah,
total.
she will continue
Okay.
through. Okay.
So, considerations for council. So I've been saying we will get back, you will have a chance to get, we're here. So the first one, if you remember at the beginning of the presentation, we had mentioned council's budget. So I said that we would need specific directions on what council wants us to do, more specifically on the salaries, because that was one that was brought up as a line that wanted for discussion. So for 2025 budget, that would be the time to bring up, oh, I clicked the button too quick. That would be the time to give direction for this budget.
All right, so I'm going to go to the floor to council. As we see, we are not balancing by 270. So go right ahead, Councillor Anderson.
I think that council salary should stay as is and not look for an increase personally.
All right, so I am actually going to go to the floor and I need individual feedback. Councillor Legacy.
I think it should be looked at. I'd like to have more information about a potential independent study done on that.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Willett.
Yeah, I
also think it should be looked at. So, doesn't mean what year or whatever we get, but we definitely need to. It's been 5 years. It needs to be looked at again. So,
Councillor Branch?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Doesn't the bylaw state that it should have been looked at by now anyway? And
I don't have it in front of me, but there's something in there that says that we should. Oh, Emmeline has it. Okay, Ms. Parker.
It states it'll be reviewed every 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
And when was that?
In 2019.
So we're definitely past 5 years.
Yeah.
And if we look at it, we would still vote whether we would take
Yes.
a raise or not.
Yeah, if council agreed, what we would do is we would do like we did the last time. You have 4 volunteers that are independent committee that they gather, and actually if we could have the same 4, it would be ideal because they already did the work study back then and they see the process of where we are now, and they would come and do a recommendation, and then it's left to council whether they want to accept it or not.
I see both sides. I see where Councillor Anderson's coming with this, because when I joined council, I didn't really even expect. I thought we'd get a small stipend, right? Like for me, it was not about the money.
No.
So, but the other side is, if we have a bylaw that says it's going to be reviewed, I don't mind that we look at it as long as we have a vote after to see
Yep.
what we're going to do going forward.
Yeah. Okay. Councillor Anderson, I already have your, oh, go right ahead. Yeah. Okay.
Sorry. But I mean, if you want to have it reviewed, fine. There's nothing, but we're in the budget process now, and Sonia's looking to adjust the budget based on, are we leaving council salaries as is? Or is this going to be something that's looked at next year for 2026? I mean, that's why she's got it on here for consideration. Like, are we increasing now, or are we leaving status quo? That's the question she's asking, really.
I think we're in a situation right now where we cannot be increasing it right now, but we could put a committee together and then move forward. And then if we decide to put it into 2026, it gets voted in prior to, or by miracle, there's money left over, and council can decide then. Councillor Burnett?
Information I see on the screen and the review for 2026.
Okay. Conseiller Leblanc?
Ouais, moi je pense qu'on devrait, écoute, je connais tous mes collègues ici, tout le monde travaille extrêmement fort, puis il en met plusieurs heures pour ce qu'on fait. On devrait être rémunéré au moins à peu près comme les autres villes de notre grosseur.
On fait beaucoup moins que Belleville.
Ben, ça, je sais
je peux vous le garantir.
Ça, je suis bien d'accord. Écoute, considérant notre budget cette année, probablement pas cette année qu'on devrait l'augmenter, mais on devrait avoir une bonne idée de la moyenne des villes de notre grosseur, qu'est-ce qu'ils sont payés et déterminés à ce moment-là.
Ouais.
Probablement. Écoute, moi, je veux des gens avec du bon critical thinking assis dans ces sièges ici, parce qu'il y en a des choses à explorer. C'est pas mal plus complexe qu'il y a bien des gens qui peuvent croire. Et je veux les bonnes personnes assises dans les sièges, que ce soit moi ou quelqu'un d'autre. Et puis, je pense qu'une façon d'attirer ces bonnes personnes-là, c'est de les rémunérer de la bonne façon.
Okay. Councillor Scarry?
Again, just going back to what Councillor Branch had mentioned a while ago, when I did put my name up for being on council, it wasn't for the remuneration side of things. It was to serve the constituents of our area, but having a review of and falling within the guidelines that are there for council and the way council should be run and exist. I do feel that there should be a review done just to see what recommendations would be made.
All right. Councillor Hondas?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Since I'm the one that brought it up, I do agree that we should have a look at it. I think just to be fair to future councils and just to make sure that we're on the same page, and like Councillor LeBlanc said, is that you want to attract good people, and I don't think there's anything wrong with having a look at it. I think we missed the boat the first time, and I just don't want us to miss the boat this time. So, and nobody does it for the money, but never seen anybody give a check back, so.
No. Okay, perfect. Okay, so we're in agreement that we will move forward with the study. We'll have someone look into it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it will apply for 2025 might just be 2026, but we will put a committee in place.
We'll adjust when the study results
'Kay.
recommendation come in. Perfect.
All right.
That gives me my answer. So these two slides, I'm going to just toggle quickly between them all, so just bear with me, just because to see the full. So requested from the committee, that's the same slide I presented earlier. The left side is what's included currently in the budget, but the right side is there for consideration because through the grants committee, that's the list that currently would be sent through the grants committee to follow the grants process. Then we have where's my slide for tourism? I skipped the slide for tourism. I was supposed to have that slide for tourism copied there as well. I'll toggle a little bit on top, but really it's the slide that you saw for tourism plus this one because as we know, they're still closely interlinked. So considering both, the question for consideration is the grants budget, and let's also discuss the tourism parallel at the same time because it is related. I thought I had copied the slide again, that part, but I forgot.
All right, so everything on the left is already connected. I have mentioned that North Tedigush for 65, that would give them an opportunity, so that's there for you to reconsider. So we have $37,000 for the Bathurst Heritage Trust. Do we know why they wanted that much?
Well, we weren't planning on discussing specifics because we believe that it should go through the grants process like the rest of them throughout the year. Yes, there is a portion in there that on their part, just to answer your question, that is operating grant, but then there's also a portion where they were trying to do specific work where they might get funding to it. So there's a portion that could be conditional to them getting that funding, but that would be an analysis that would be brought through the grants committee and they would
So
come
you
up
want
with
to
a
know whether
recommendation.
we keep it at 165?
Yes, so what we're looking for is the total grants budget. Is it 165? Increase, decrease, and I'll link it to the comments that I heard toward tourism with an added line of, do you want to keep a grants, it would still be in the grants budget, but tourism grants, and then it would increase the total 165 to include that section within the grants.
All right, so I'll start this then. Councillor Anderson.
I don't like how it's structured. I know how your brain is working and it's all coming from the grant for you, grants. I just don't like how it's structured because like when I look at this, for me, there's a lot of things that really doesn't belong under a grants. And I guess when I look at grants, it's extra monies that we can give to associations, whatever, to help them out in the city of Bathurst, like the milk fund that used to come to us every year for $500 or whatever. Like that was how the grant fund was once structured, and I kind of liked how it was structured. Like when I look at here, Hospitality Days was never part of a grant. The Pissoquet Sports Lodge, never part of a grant. You know, there was a lot of places there that did come for some monies. On the other side, on the left-hand side, I mean, we're kind of full tilt with our commitments, and the rec center kind of put us over that with the 45,000, and now you're saying 65. Like for me, I came in here tonight wanting to cut the grants budget, quite honestly, and I wanted to cut it down to $60,000. But that's not even going to cover, with the rec center on there, that doesn't even cover our committed. So, like I just have an issue with a lot of these requests that if it was up to me and me alone, I'd be no, or a partial, you know, like just because somebody asks for X amount doesn't mean that we can necessarily afford to give them X amount. And I think that that's something that we really need to look at closer as opposed to giving the full tilt, give what we can. Do you know what I mean? So like if it was up to me, we'd be cutting the grants fund, quite honestly. So I don't know what else to tell you.
All right, so I'll keep moving. Councillor Brunette, do you want to cut the grants or leave it at the 165?
I'll leave it at 165.
165. Conseiller Leblanc?
Are we only talking about the left side, the grants at 165? Because that I would leave as is. But if, on the other, remember, there's another side to this page that shows
Yeah.
315,000. I think that needs to be discussed at some point too. Is that going to be round two?
Well, see, that's the thing, is it just on the left side comes up to 92,400. We're left with 72,600. And how much do we have spent on the other side with the request?
The requests received right now total 165,000 plus DBRC contingency at 150. That's where the 315 comes. So right now, discretionary, there's $72,000 left out of the regular, but we have a request above that on the right that would be sent to the grants committee.
I totally understand.
Yeah.
But that comes back to, again, see, if they sent to the grant committee, I'm making a decision on hospitality days, that should be tourism, the 250,000. So, to me, it's non-negotiable. That brings people to the city. What I saw in tourism, yeah, there was a lot of stuff, but it seemed like capital repairs. Yes, like the boardwalks and stuff like that. Yes, they do. People go walk on them. We need. It seems to me that's our 100% responsibility to upkeep that. So, what do? Do we go with Madam Mayor's plan? Because there are some of these I understand. Look, they can wait till next year. I don't think this is the time to go over one by one and debate them all, because we'll be here till about 1 a.m. at best. But reality is, I can't just sit here and say, okay, we're going to go to the left and the right. The DBRC contingency, and as an example, what a major development for our city. I'm not even sure most of our citizens realize or know about what's going to happen there. How do we take that 150,000 away, which could cost us millions if we do take it away, right? It looks like a big number, 150,000. Like, to me, there's a lot more to discuss than how we position this right now. The 165 on the left for me is a no-brainer. That will cover some of the stuff on the right, but there's some of the things on the right that I think can wait, and there's others that I don't even think should be there. Again, like hospitality days, for me, that's a no-brainer tourism levy piece of money, but that's...
So as I said, coming back to your comments, some you see as tourism, we could increase the grants budget by not spending some tourism levy and leave it open as a grants for tourism, 100%. So it's just we would take off some line items in the tourism that we presented earlier, which I wish I had my slides side by side. But
and I agree, but let's take example of the crosswalk. For me, that has nothing to do with tourism, but I don't even know what the project is there. But if it's for citizen security, well, we have to do it. We can't not do it, right? That's why I said this is much more of a conversation than yes or no, because no can cost a life, and you know what I mean. In certain situations where I feel I'm sorry, I like the road that Madam Mayor suggested. It's let's find a way to make this. Maybe not everything. But again, maybe the grants committee, we should meet and we should look at what's on the right and make that discussion, and then maybe we can narrow that down a little bit more and then come back and say, well, instead of 315, let's look at 240. I'm just throwing a number out. That's the way I'm seeing it right now.
All right. Councillor Scary?
Thank you, Your Worship. Seeing the items on the left, those are items that are committed to, that we've already, that's sort of not set in, well, I guess would say set in stone. When I do see the ones on the right, Charlie's Cat Rescue, they have requested, but we have not approved anything there. And there's a lot of the items that are on that one to the right that probably can be postponed or would be postponed to stay within a certain budget. And the hospitality days, definitely in favor of a $50,000 contribution. And however it comes out, if it's showing under the grants but it's moved from somewhere else, I mean that's what your specialty is, and making it happen for us. And I think it's just that it shows under the grants for administration purposes, is it, or so? Again, 165,000 to me, that's a good grants budget. Let's take a look at the other side and see how we can move things there, or if there's items there that definitely can't happen this year, because there are some items that came in that are being asked for there that came in after the actual deadline that we posted. And maybe that's one way we can really keep track of and curb some of that by having, if it comes in after the September deadline or August deadline, it's, you know, I'm sorry you missed it, it has to come back next year.
Mr. Pettigrew?
Thank you, Your Worship. If we could go back just to the, I just thought of something here and we're having a discussion. When you look at the additional, when it said contingency for 150 for DBRC, that slide, I think that's part of that 315.
Yeah.
So the 165 is the total. Is it possible, I'm going to ask Ms. Gauvin, if that project is approved or go ahead, that at that point council could use a reserve or something to cover that? So it's not committed, but it's available there if they need to go ahead with that project.
Yes, 100%.
So you don't have to allocate it. You know that that reserve is there or the ability is there to pay for it if it's approved. It's like a conditional approval, right? That's
100%. And the reserve for those major projects, the reserve is obviously there for if we have a major event happening in the city where we would need to use that fund, but also for special projects, because right now we have a DBRC contingency in case they get funding, but then it means that nothing else is being done with that money for that year, and maybe they get the funding that they hope to get in 2026, not 2025, but now that money's tied to something. The reserve are there for major projects that are there, and absolutely, if that happens, and it's the project that council wants to do, there is still the reserve that would be 100% accessible to do that major project if it comes.
Okay, so council, I just put a nod ahead. Would you be okay with that? Like, are you okay that if we put that aside, but then if, you know, they move ahead with their development, we're taking $150,000 from a reserve fund? Thumbs up? Okay, thumbs
That would
down?
obviously be brought back to council for decision, because to take money in or out of the reserve, we need a specific resolution for that date at that time. So if they are ready at that time to make a request for that contingency, it would be brought back to council for that specific project, and council approves or not taking money from the reserve.
That's my
to pay for it.
concern, because the thing is that this development, once we move forward, is going to be something else in itself. And, you know, to say, oh no, well, we don't have the money, and no, we're not going to participate. Like, that's my, Deputy Mayor Willett.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So are you saying the 150,000 would go back to the tourism fund?
No.
Well,
What I'm
then-
saying is, if council wants to, we can keep a contingency and budget 150,000 in our budget in case they do get funding. If they don't, however, then we have like surplus money that we haven't done anything with. What we could do is, when the time comes, if they are ready, we have the available money in the reserve, where at that time council would make a resolution to take money out from the reserve to cover, because they would want to go ahead with that project.
I find it a lot easier to keep the tourism levy for tourism stuff. And to me, that's the way it should go. If we don't have the money, we could actually take a project like the Roussel building and do half this year and half next year. That would give us our 250,000 that we have in our levy, to stay in the levy. So, but no, I'd rather keep the hotel levy as stuff for tourism, so. That's, no, not going back. No, she wants to put $150,000 from the reserve for that project. It still doesn't help us with the hotel levy. It still doesn't help us with what's on that list, so.
Yeah, all right, so, I think, did I ask Councillor Scary? Okay, Councillor Hondas.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
I take it for granted that 45,000 on the right, if you want to move it to 65.
If council wishes.
Council wishes that drop that number still to that.
Yeah. Okay, oh, it went off on its own, okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's all good. I'd like to see us use the best bang for our buck and get as much as we can do. I do agree Hospitality Days is a great adventure and it's a great festival. It's one of the best festivals in New Brunswick going right now. I think we got to keep it going. It's on the wave up, you know. The downtown, that project, as Mayor Chamberlain said, it's going to be such a good add-on to our city. But we got to stay within certain limits. We do have a bylaw, and we do have a grants committee that have certain rules that we're supposed to abide by. If the request isn't made by a certain day, it's not supposed to be looked at. It's supposed to be looked at the following, I think it's 3 times a year, if I'm not mistaken. There's some stuff there that we have to look at that we need to do, like, you know, unfortunately Charlie's Cat Rescue and stuff like that. I think we need to go by and let the grants committee do their job with the criteria that they have. But we have to find a way to do as much as we can. I know you were talking about that $42,000 from a different slide that you couldn't move over. You know, that's going to help us in any way, shape, or form. We got to find a way to get as much done as we can without going over budget by a crazy amount. If we need to borrow a little bit more, I think that might be a good idea. Mayor Chamberlain brought that up, so I understand what you're saying, that we've been kind of paying off that debt, but somewhere along the way, hard to please everybody, but you got to please as many as you can.
Okay, so I'll go to Councillor Legacy.
I'm going to have a suggestion and a couple points that'll kind of change all of this, so item by item is kind of irrelevant for me at this point. So you can come back to me later.
All right. I'll go Councillor Branch.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't know, coming into this, I was thinking the same way as Councillor Anderson. Like, I was thinking that it would be nice to cut the amount of the grants back down and get rid of some of that discretionary. But now when I look at all these other projects, I'm not sure, because, I mean, you have organizations there that financing would be conditional on getting money from the city. We don't want to handcuff ourselves that way either, so.
Okay.
I do have a couple of other questions. I don't know if this is the time or if you'd want me to come back to that.
Is it based on this?
It's not based on this?
No, no, right now we're talking on this.
Okay.
We'd come back after, because it's going to be a long night. Okay, Councillor Legacy, did you want to add now or later? No? Okay. So here's my thing, is that I believe that the All Beach building upgrades, the waterfront, the Santa Crosswalk, they're all important. It's $140,000. I believe that this portion, we should leave the tourism levy alone, or if we make 2 portions and we keep the grant and we have a tourism levy and we lower the grant a bit, I'm not sure. You know, maybe you lower the grant to 140. To make these decisions this evening is not going to be easy, but I believe that there are things that we want to look at, and I don't know if you're showing them tonight for the Capital Born Board, but we either cut a couple of things in there and we add the Yohal Beach. We add, those things are important. We add that in there and we minus somewhere else, because if there's anywhere that needs to be cut, it cannot be within departments. They need their money. Each department needs their money. And that's the only area where I believe that we may have an opportunity if we want to review it.
So we will look at the list of what we are purchasing cash when we get a slide ahead. So I just want to maybe just circle back just for clarification for me, just so that I understand, because it's many opinions in different ways that I want to make sure that I grasp what to enter. So this was what we presented for council. The line for other promotion that is left unallocated for $42,000. Am I understanding that money would be going for tourism grants? It's okay to say yes if you wish so that we wouldn't allocate any other, so that we could increase the grants that we are giving from 165 and make sure we have money for the ones that you mentioned that are clearly for tourism grants.
Okay, so then we would do 207. But again, if we do that, then everything stays as such. We take 42,000, we put it towards. But when the project for the 150,000 comes into play, we take it out of the reserve fund. See, the thing is when you get your assessment and your budget late, here we are at the last hour trying to balance this, where we should be having these discussions in September. So coming into November and trying to balance the budget within the next couple of weeks, it makes it very difficult. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. Just a clarification, Sonia, tourism signage, didn't that normally come out of a communications budget?
Mm-hmm.
Since the start of the changes in the signage, we've always budgeted in the tourism.
So like the last year, 2 years? Because the last time I remember seeing signage, it was under a communication budget.
Yeah, but we were using money that came from tourism initiatives, yes.
Okay. I don't remember that, but like I said, I just remember seeing it under a communications budget.
So that
And I can double check them because I don't want to put my hand on fire. There's a lot of numbers in my head right now.
Yeah.
But by memory, we had allocated a portion from the tourism. But again, I will not put my hand in the fire because it's a lot of number,
I
but
think
by
it
memory.
might have been budgeted under the communications, but then as we went through the year and determined, because when the tourism levy first started, like you said, it was during COVID, we were unsure how much we were actually going to make. Of course, the first couple of years, there wasn't a lot there. So I think that you were able to like kind of rob Peter to pay Paul kind of deal.
Maybe.
I think that's what transpired because it was budgeted in the communications, I do believe.
It could. That's why I said I'm not going to put my hand on fire because I like my hands, but it's possible, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Councillor Hondas?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just got a question through to Mr. Pettigrew, maybe. These prices that we're saying for the Yahoo Beach upgrade and the waterfront boardwalk and the St. Anne, are those estimates that we got done, or it's a guesstimate of what we need to get those repairs? Could we maybe spend a little less money on the Yahoo building upgrade and stuff like that, or is that something that went out for tender and we have concrete numbers, or is that just like a good guess of what it might cost? So I mean, if we
Thank you, Worship. We'll go to Mr. Wilbur. He has some pricing. I'm not sure on the avenue of how we got it, but I'll leave that to him.
Mr. Wilbur?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, to answer your question, we have gone out for pricing specifically on those items. And excuse me, truth be told, specifically for the Yahoo building beach upgrade, like that is one phase of a few phases that need to be done to make that building specifically more accessible. For example, we recently had some work completed at that building, and simply to add a few accessible doors and to replace some rotten fascia, we were looking at a total of $15,000 just for that. So when we're looking at more extensive upgrades, certainly the cost escalates quite quickly.
And I truly believe that we should do that work. I just don't believe it should be taken from the tourism levy. I think that should be put in the capital borrowing board, minus it somewhere else and put it in there.
Can I just get a little bit more of information on the St. Anne crosswalk and what exactly entails for $30,000?
All right. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. The St. Anne crosswalk, one of our most highly used sections of trail, which comes from in behind St. Anne Street, leaving from the Casey Irving Center, crossing St. Anne to connect to the watershed. It's one of our... Is
that over by Nipisiguit
It's close to Nipisiguit River Company, correct. That's probably one of our most highly used sections of trail, which currently intersects St. Anne with no form of crosswalk. So it is a very hazardous area, especially with the amount of traffic flow that we're seeing on St. Anne. So the estimates that we have there are for a signalized solar-powered crosswalk with flashing lights. which was per the recommendation of some work that we had done with Roy's Consultants to make sure that it's a properly signalized crosswalk.
Okay, and then for the waterfront, was that part of what we did last summer, or is it more still that we need to do? Because I know they fixed our ramp there that they did a pretty good job with, so is this an additional tour, or is that paying for that?
No, this would be another phase to continuing that work. That boardwalk structure, when it was constructed, in all honesty, wasn't designed as well as it should have been in terms of the materials that were used, and it's in the process of actually rotting and failing the structure underneath. So that cost is primarily to have the boardwalk structure opened up and to be reinforced from underneath with screw piles and bracing to actually secure the structure to make it safe for people to be on. Because it is, admittedly, it's a hazard that it could fail.
I know some people might not like me right now, but have we ever thought of maybe raising the rent at the waterfront? Because I know they've been getting a
They
sweet-
should. There hasn't been any rent increase there in years.
Maybe that's something we can look at. I'm not saying to do it tonight, call them tomorrow morning and say this is it there, but let's have a look at that because
Going
some
into
of
2025.
in all honesty, they've been there for a long time and they've been a good per diem there. So everybody else wants a little place there, so everybody's raising, but the city doesn't seem to raise. So I think we should look at that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You're welcome. Okay, so we're no further ahead and we still have to do capital and we still have quite a bit to do.
So I'm not sure I got an end result for
End result,
tourism
and see,
grant.
that's the thing is that it's being brought to us. We believe that the tourism levy should stay tourism levy. I know you're asking, should we just take the 42 and put it in there and that would be our new budget? No.
Okay. So, so we'll continue, but to discuss the tax rate, obviously we're going to need a few, because some tax rates will change according to decisions of what it is. So we'll continue, and then we'll come back to see where that brings us.
Yeah.
So for the other item for consideration is exactly that. So right now in the budget where we showed how much money we would pay cash, there's 910 planned as part of the capital reinvestment strategy where that's reallocating the savings that we paid for debt. And that's just a transfer of instead of paying for past debt, we buy new. 1.5 million from the surplus of 2020, 140 for the tourism focused restricted revenue. That makes it $2.5 million in total. So really the list that we have here, that is the full list. Oh, I apologize. There's some that are hidden behind the logo. The two last ones, you'll have to look on the French side to have the full list. The transfer to the capital fund, that is the list of the items up to pay cash. So obviously that is very much linked to the capital budget, which we'll be looking, but that is where if we decide not to pay cash for some, that would change this line item. So we'll come back to that after we look at the capital fund. And then the library, will come back with more detailed information. So the tax rate, the value of 1 cent for each subunit. So to North Tedigush, when we change from 1 cent, the impact is 8,688. And that's why when I say when we increase the budget by maybe 50,000 for them, 50,000 is multiple times 8,600. So it does have an impact directly for them. The other local districts, which is Big River, Santa and everything, it's 15,088. And for the old city of Bathurst, 1 cent equals 23,776. So the considerations for council will change the distribution of the unconditional grant because the unconditional grant is distributed according to the percentage of the expenses for each of the subunits. And then the total tax rate required to cover the gap, that will be what will bring up the recommendation for the tax rate for 2025. So on November 25th, we want to incorporate the considerations from council to come up with a tax rate, but if we're not ready to do that on the 25th, that we will prolong. It means the dates to be able to come up with with the
Okay,
tax
so if I'm
calculation.
understanding correctly, you're bringing it to us to see if we want to increase it from
No.
$1.77?
No, what I was bringing this for is to explain why we're not bringing one tonight and the impact of every cent, so that your considerations, you know where it will impact from ish, and that's what will influence the recommendation when we come on the 25th, if we can come back on the 25th with an actual recommendation.
Okay, so, which brings me back to what we had on the grants, or the funds that we would pay cash. We minus 500,000 from Roussel Neil Complex, bring that down by the amount, or we borrow $140,000 more from the Capital Borrowing Board, and we don't even have to talk about tax rate. Deputy Mayor Willett?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If I remember right, during reform, we do increase the taxes for 5 years for 6 years. So that's going up by 5 cents or 9?
It's a maximum of 5 cents for the transition. Some years it's more than 5 cents because sometimes they have like major additional costs. For example, if they had like major increases, it's something that's only for them. But for the reform, it's 5 cents. It can be lower than that depending of what the budget is, but that number can't be determined until the numbers stop moving. Once they stop moving, then we see exactly where it is.
Okay, but there was a maximum of what you...
5
Yes.
cents.
So what we take is what they are over in their section. We divide it by 4 years that are left, and
Yeah.
that would provide us what the increase would be for them.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Councillor Branch?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to mention something, like, we had the discussions a while ago with the Regional Service Commission. So if we don't have the safety coordinator, we save 20-some thousand dollars there. If we don't go with the 90-some thousand dollars for transportation, so we just saved $120,000. And if we're not certain about the $150,000 for DBRC, like you say, we could take that out of there, and if the funds are required, we could vote to take that from our reserve. So right there is $270,000. So then we would have a balanced budget.
Very, very close.
The 150's not in there? Okay. And I just have another question, and I don't want to open a big can of worms, and I don't want this to sound very negative, and I'm not talking about essential services like fire and police, but like, have we looked for savings within the departments? And the reason why I'm asking, it's like, last year there were certain times, or this year, there were times when there were hires made, and when council questioned the hires, the answer we got was there was money in the budget. So that's why these people were hired. But now when you look, those salaries are added to the budget, and we're asking, there's an ask there to cover that, right? And I don't want to start singling out positions, but I mean, there's one position that council was dead set again, said, we don't support that position. And we were told, like, we're not asking permission, we're telling you that the hire is being made as a courtesy, yet when you look, the full amount now is here on the budget, looking for that to be supported. So I guess if the money was there to hire the person last year, why is the full salary being requested and then some this year? And when you look at that, like, you look at additional management salaries, like, we're probably looking at $700,000-800,000, right, between what was added last year and what we're looking at adding in 2025.
Ms. Pettigrew, you want to add to that, or? Okay, hold on, I'm going to give you the mic. I just got too many people on the mic here, okay.
I think for any of that discussion, I don't have all those details, but I mean, we could look at that information to put that together and have an in-camera discussion, or a discussion on personnel. Normally, that's where you would discuss it. But it'd be specifically, we can have a discussion and find out specifically what you're looking at, and I'll be able to bring that back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
because.
Or be able to share that, right?
Yeah, because like my peers were saying tonight, like I don't want to be saying no, I don't want to be dipping in the reserves. You know, I want us to continue the trajectory that we're on. But at the same time, like we have to be prudent, I guess, and we have to question and challenge, so.
Okay. Councillor Legacy, I'm going to give you the mic. All right.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I'm taking a little bit of a different view on this whole budget process.
Can't hear you. Yeah.
I said I'm taking a little bit of a different view on this whole budget process. I want to start off by thanking Sonia and the team and all the department heads for the work they've done on this report. Every year our process involves the financial team meeting with the department heads, receiving all their wish lists, and they slowly, piece by piece, eliminate based on priority until we have a somewhat workable number. We get an initial presentation on these requests, and then we wait until the base assessment for warrants is received from the province, and we determine how much more there is to eliminate. This process has worked, but it's missing a key ingredient. Both councils and, more importantly, the citizens' requests. Now, we're always told this budget is ours and belongs to us, but the path of least resistance is created to make it harder to say no when it's all neatly packaged like this. It comes down to, do we eliminate from option A or do we eliminate from option B? So I'd like to discuss some numbers. For simplicity, I'm only going to do Bathurst C, old Bathurst, because the other ones are going to have increases for the reform. So if we didn't take an additional dollar from our citizens of Old Bathurst, the rate would drop to 1.65 from 1.775. Obviously, there's cost increases, and so changes need to be made. So hypothetically, if we go with our overall strategy of trying to match with CPI, which is, I had it at 2.6, so my numbers might not be correct, as it's 2.9, we would have a rate of 1.6975. So that should have enough of an increase to maintain our current system with the cost of living for management and the services provided. Now, I know this is too late in the budget process, so what I would like council to deliberate is a staged decrease to match Miramichi. So the most common arguments we're told in this room against decreasing the rate are twofold. It's one, that our infrastructure deficit is $140 million and growing every year. Now, we received a number last month of $8 million per year we need to be putting so that number doesn't increase. We're at $3 million, and part of that's cash, part of that's not cash. It's loans that we get. Even if it all becomes cash, we're still not going to be enough at that level. Every municipality in this country are in the exact same situation as us. No one is maintaining their infrastructure level. So without widespread reform federally and provincially, it's just not going to happen no matter how much we save. So we shouldn't punish our citizens based on an unattainable goal. The second argument is that Moncton decreased their rate and they regret it. The staff and council would have liked to have that money to put it towards their projects, absolutely. But I doubt you talk to any citizens and they would regret that. So they also ended up getting that money back in future years' assessments anyway. So they've already recovered that decrease they've had. So as councillors, we're here to be the voice of reason and balance between management and services provided by the city and the needs and wants of our citizens. And the citizens' requests, they're never in this room to create this document. So and I understand the previous council, when they were elected in 2016, they had a significantly different outlook. They handled it very well, should be recognized and applauded for that work. They had $35 million in debt with a budget of $31.5 million. That's overall budget. Now in 2013, the audited statements were down to $22 million in debt, a $13 million reduction. Well done. But we have $52 million now as a budget. So our debt to income ratio went from over 1 to 0.42. We're no longer in a survival mode as a city, and we can start looking forward towards balanced growth and fiscal responsibility in unison. We own 2 more budgets in our term as a council. And if my proposal, I would like to reduce the rate to 1.755 in this year and 1.715 the following year to match Miramichi. We'll be finishing our term not only more competitive, but also closer to being true of our moniker of the hub of the North. This year's suggested decrease would mean an additional $300,000 to reduce from this proposed budget, which may sound like a lot on top of the $270 we're already struggling to find. But the reality is, we're still increasing the spending available by the city by $1.5 million out of $1.8. So that would be the same as if, hypothetically, our assessment didn't increase 8%, it increased 6.66. So if we received an increase of 6.66, they would have come as a staff and got us a number closer to. So they can still help do the work to bring us to a balanced budget, even with another 300 reduction. So together, we can simultaneously be fiscally responsible by paying down debt, give our management staff clear directions from what us as a council wants to do with our tax rate moving forward, so it doesn't come as a surprise. We can listen to our citizens by reducing rates, which we've just been giving increases and increases and increases. It is a combination. Yes, it is because of the assessments, but overall, we, by not lowering rates, are still responsible for increases. And we'd still be replacing aging infrastructure and still be able to provide the services we have been, if not increase some of them. So I want us to take the time to think about that. It's $300,000. It's a staged approach, a targeted goal that now our citizens are actually being included in this discussion and not just the department heads.
Councillor Legacy, when I got this today, to have a discussion this evening, this is big. And it's been, the city staff is doing a wonderful job, absolutely wonderful job. But I truly do not believe that council is involved in any of this. It comes prepared for us, it's given to us, and then we have to make a decision how we balance it. I believe that we should be more involved in this overall budget. We're not. Maybe because it's structured, we're limited on time, but I truly do not believe that we have a play into how this is really being done. So I agree with you to a certain degree. Okay, where do we go from here?
We had the answers from your questions from the utility fund.
Okay.
From last time. So now I kind of don't know where to go in the sense of the 25th. I was proposing a tax rate. I'm not sure where that's going. And then I had the results from council. They had a few questions. So when we looked, the total proposed expense budget was adjusted. So remember, there were some transfers that changed. The allocated transfer. So changes from the first draft are simply we adjusted the electricity cost with new information, and then we adjusted the transfers. But we also increased with the last projections that we did in 2024. We were comfortable enough to increase slightly the revenues. So the budget expenses is $8.1 million. And then we had, we adjusted, that's a revised version. If we don't increase the revenues in the utility rates, that's 7.2 million revenues. So the gap, instead of last time it was 131,000, I believe, or 137. Now the gap is 81,000. So to cover that gap, if it's all the spread throughout, it would be 2% instead of the 2.5. And then it would balance. Now we were asked by council, what would it do if we only increase the non-residential? So if we spread that out throughout to cover the 81,000, the increase would go from 2% to 3.5% for non-residential. What that would do is instead of being covered by, so on the 2% side, we have 46,000 that's covered by over 4,000 different invoices that we send. Some have multiple units on them, but it's still the number of invoices and 410 accounts. Instead, the 3.5 would be covered by only those 410 accounts. So obviously we have less invoices coming out. So the cost per invoices for those non-residential companies would be higher per invoice. And depending on their use of water, it can vary greatly amongst them. So really, that's the difference between the two. So considerations for this one is to increase all categories by 2%, only non-residential by 3.5%, or we had a proposition, if council wishes to maintain the 2.5%, Mr. Abernathy had something that he could have done with that $50,000 if we want to come back to the 2.5. But those are the discussions for the utility.
Okay. So I do want to go back to Mr. Legacy, like Councillor Legacy afterwards, but for now we're going to do this and then we will, I have a feeling we're going to need an additional meeting because there's a lot going here and I don't think that this is all going to be resolved, and I think that we need to have another meeting and actually consider Mr. Legacy's recommendation and what can we do and discuss as council. But to make this decision at 9:30 at night, I believe that we will require another meeting. Okay, so this is what we have on the table. Councillor Anderson?
So you want us to pick one?
I was asked to present data, I was presented it, so honest, yes, it's council, it's guidance, yes.
For me, I would like to see the increase of 3.5 to the non-residential and leave our residents, our citizens alone for a year, personally.
Okay, so I'm going to go around the table. Councillor Burnett. Yeah, okay, I'm going to give, yeah.
No increase at all.
Okay. Councillor LeBlanc?
No increase would be a deficit again, and all our citizens,
Here.
with reason, are complaining. They've never had as much brown water as there is this year, and they're saying you increased our costs so you'd be able to have the budgets to fix this. I understand that this has been left untreated, if you want, for 20, 30 years, whatever, and it's going to be very difficult for us to catch up. We certainly won't catch up if we again start running deficits in the utilities, though. So, if I'm looking at what she just presented, each industry would have an increase of almost $200 a year. Is that what you're saying there on that 3.5?
No, it depends on the industry. Well,
there's 410 accounts, right?
Yes, so really that amount is...
If you divide 81,000 by 410, it'll give you your...
Not necessarily, because they are consumption. So a company that is a car wash would have a higher increase than one that is... doesn't use much water, kind of thing. And don't forget that we also have Beresford in there, where we have agreements with where we want to be...
How much did you say 2% increase per resident was again?
Per 1 second.
On average? $1.68 a month?
So 2% annually is on the one where we have the most users is the line where the one is. So per year it's $16.50, so $1.38.
$1.38. In my mind, to do this right, and this won't make me popular by any means, but as far as I'm concerned, we should have a bylaw that's what the increase is annually, 2% across the board. And if we do get to a point where there ever is a surplus, we can stop it there. But we're just going to be digging the same hole we were in previously. So, like I said, this won't make me any friends. But on this one here, I would give the 2% increase on that.
Okay, we're going to keep going around. Councillor Scarry?
I'm not, I mean, where I am, my taxes and my rates and stuff are going to be going up, certainly. We do have to move forward, and we have to, we
This is
do have
for
to.
Water and sewer.
Yeah.
So,
Can I think about it a little
yep,
bit more?
I'll come back.
Yeah.
Councillor Hondas?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do believe by not increasing it yearly brought us to the mess that we were in the last time. So I definitely think that it needs to be an increase. But bringing the flat rate was kind of supposed to give our citizens a little bit of a break. So I'd have to side with Councillor Anderson, maybe 3.5 on non-residents, and leave our residents alone for at least a year. Or if we can work with 1%, I don't know if that would be an option. But if not, leave the residents alone and non-residents 3.5.
All right. Councillor Branch?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm just kind of curious, and I'm sorry if you stated it and I missed it, but what does a 3.5% to non-residents do? Like, how do we compare to, say, Bell Bay? If we give that 3.5% increase, are we comparable to them, or?
I don't remember the non-residential for Bell Bay. I know that residential, they pay the same flat fee regardless of how many units. I don't remember by heart what is the non-residential on their end. We
I
can
just
check. We can bring
wouldn't
that
want to
in.
be increasing our rate and then driving business out of Bathurst, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I was against this whole thing last time, so I mean, I got to pick something, so I say the 2% across the board.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Willett?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I'm going to say the 2% across the board, because if you put the non-resident up at 3.5%, and then they fall into an issue like Councillor Legacy said, that we're getting all this brown water, but for a lot of outfits in town, like a laundromat or something like that, you're talking about a lot of money that you're throwing out the door, you're throwing out the window. So unless there would be some kind of waiver for the non-residents, for them to be able to get away from that when we do have problems, and this year it's been every second day, so it definitely wouldn't be profitable. So that's why I go 2% across the board.
Okay. Councillor Legacy?
Yeah, I wanted to agree with Deputy Mayor Willett there, because there's no protections for the industry, commercial whatsoever. If we get a leak, we're stuck with it. So the change to the flat rate for residents, at least they have some protection against that. And it's not just the water cost, it's the material, it's the time. We've had so much downtime because we weren't able to brew or clean because of dirty water. We've lost weeks of production, and we can't keep punishing our businesses like that. So at very worst, 2% all across the board. It should be fair until those protections are able to be put in place.
Because you have to drain everything, you use all that water to drain it, clean it, and then you go ahead and then it's still not good enough and you have to drain all over again. All right, so we have questions. Councillor Anderson?
Just a clarification, I know at one point with Bell Bay, they were charging the residents the exact same as the commercial. Everybody paid the same across the board. There was no differentiation. Because I remember when I sat on the water committee, then like with Bell Bay, our issue was, well, why is your car washes paying the same as a single person home? And that was the structure that they had in place then. I'm not sure if it's since been changed, but that's what it was.
I heard it's been changed, what the amount is, but it has been changed. So the industrial are paying more. I don't know the amount, but they are paying more than from residential. Okay. I'm going back to you, Councillor Scary, because I need your feedback.
I would say 2% across the board, and then some sort of contingency or some sort of document be drawn up in the event that there is a situation for business that would cost them an exorbitant amount or loss of revenue due to the fact that they could not operate.
Yeah. Councillor Branch?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess I just want to point out, too, that the whole reason why we went to this was because staff was saying to charge more based on consumption doesn't work because it drives down consumption. So, I mean, if we do increase 3.5, that's another reason why I went with the 2%, right? Because if we increase 3.5 on non-residential users, then it is possible they just cut down the consumption and we end up in the same place we were last time.
Okay. So we are at 5 at 2%, based on the feedback that I am getting. But I do agree, and I mean, I don't know how we can do this, but I mean, we've had hotels, we've had massive problems with some business industry, and I mean, maybe it's something, Mr. Pettigrew, that we could sit down and put some sort of policy in place for these businesses. But, you know, when you have them ruin everything, all the bed sheets, everything, and then they have to bring it to get it clean to another venue because they can't clean it themselves, those are big dollars and big cost that falls under their pocket. And that's where it comes back to having to invest. As you said, Councillor Legacy, a while ago, we're requiring about $8 to $9 million to be invested per year in infrastructure, and we're doing 3. So in 5 years from now, we're at 64 million, but we're still balancing below. So, and it is across the board. We're not, Marmoshe's in the same boat as we are. So looks like 2%.
Okay.
I'll still have to be voted, but based on what I have here, 2%.
So the other two funds, there's no additional information except for we got more pricing for the tractor. The cost is 40,000 more, but that is already in there. We reallocated some stuff and we cleaned up where we had, when we cleaned up the budgets, there was like a few amounts there. So that amount is already in there, but that's the only change. We balanced the 5-year capital budget for the general capital fund, which you have in your packages, and no changes were made in the utility side. So unless there's comments or things you want to look at, right now we're still at the same spot for those two.
Okay. I think we are going to require another meeting because we haven't finalized, I know, and we're at the end, like we normally say, but after 9:30, things don't work. And I do want to bring back the conversation that Councillor Legacy brought up. So we'll adjourn the meeting for this evening, and we will schedule another meeting before we even get to November 25th, if Council's okay with that, because I think it's quite important. Okay. All right. Everybody else is okay? Okay. Everybody on Facebook, if you're still with us, thank you for sticking around. And thank you, everybody. And it's not to take away from the good work that the city staff is doing. It's just, this is a lot. So have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you.